Eyes up here. Genes are passed down from parents to offspring.
11.
Oh my god, Sydney Sweeney, an American Eagle promoting eugenics and pushing the Aryan race propaganda was not in my 2025 bingo card.
Because of a political ideology.
The hottest ad out there.
Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican. I think her ad is fantastic.
She was once their relatable Euphoria star.
I don't even know why she would say that.
But it felt like that image was fading.
Especially when she's so feeding into that one audience.
Well, I have a photo.
What? What do you?
We can't say anything else. Is there? No, we can't.
She says, I feel like I have no money, right? And she said, I have to give 10% to my manager and 10% to my lawyer, and I have a mortgage and blah, blah, blah. I think Sydney Sweeney is playing all of us.
Why would I need to do that?
Sydney Sweeney has her key.
What parts of yourself would you sacrifice to make your dreams come true? What parts of yourself would you exploit? It seems like nowadays, so often we come across this fork in the road. Essentially, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it, as told by the Pussycat Dolls. On July 23rd, American Eagle launched their fall campaign, alongside famous Hollywood celebrity and actor Sydney Sweeney.
I'm not here to tell you to buy American Eagle jeans. And I definitely won't say that they're the most comfortable jeans I've ever worn.
The tagline read, "Sydney Sweeney has great jeans."
If you said that you want to buy the jeans, I'm not going to stop you.
Sydney Sweeney has her jeans.
You see what I did there, right?
While at first the ad may not seem controversial, it was the video that came alongside the campaign that caused it to become one of the most controversial modern ad campaigns, and Sydney Sweeney's biggest controversy to date.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
When you first saw the ad, what was your reaction?
I won't lie to you. At first, I kind of skipped it over. I didn't pay too much mind to it until later on TikTok. I see people bringing more attention.
It's giving eugenics. It's giving white supremacy. I'm uncomfortable watching that, and I'm white.
Sydney seemingly begins discussing her genetics, saying that genes are passed down to offspring. As the camera zooms in on her body, pans up to her eyes, as she says, "My genes are blue."
As more people saw the ads, the headlines began, and so did the backlash.
This weird jeans ad for American Eagle is at best ignorant and at worst like literally promoting you.
Others defending American Eagle.
We're sick and tired of the nonsense where you are not allowed to ever celebrate someone who is white and blonde and blue-eyed.
For many, this was a shocking advertisement, but it wasn't the only shocking advertisement that Sydney Sweeney has done over the summer. Sydney Sweeney also sold her own bathwater in a bar of soap alongside the company Dr. Squatch.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body? Wash? Well, you can't have it. Because this isn't for boys, it's for men.
Our team in Sydney kept her bathwater from this bath and made soap with it, with Sydney's permission. Sydney's bathwater bliss.
On my way to go pick up Sydney Sweeney's bathwater. Bag secured, boys.
Boom. Bathwater is one of the ingredients listed. I'm dead.
All of a sudden, Sydney Sweeney's career took a sharp turn. From an actor trying to be taken seriously in the industry, to someone seemingly throwing away their morals in exchange for monetary gain.
When I said Sydney Sweeney needed to choose between being hot or talented, and that the main problem she was facing was that she was making herself too accessible with the kind of brand deal she was taking, I did not expect to be proven right so expeditiously.
More and more, brands are leaning into chaotic marketing to set themselves apart from the digital noise. And many are using controversial media figures to help give themselves a boost. All publicity is good publicity in the modern digital age. And throughout Sydney Sweeney's career, more and more she began leaning into controversy for financial gain. Whether showing her body in a camp sort of way.
Is that Sydney Sweeney?
How much did you make? 41, 22, $36,000.
or saying the most outrageous thing in a commercial. Sydney Sweeney will do it for a brand deal, essentially. But before this, Sydney Sweeney had participated in award-winning projects, from Euphoria to Peabody-winning Reality to The Handmaid's Tale, all of which tell different stories of women in society who are exploited or end up in compromising positions. And yet, to the public, Sydney Sweeney was leaning into her own exploitation.
But tonight, I'm excited for everyone to get to know the real me. I feel like people only see me as the girl on TV who screams, cries, and has sex. Sometimes it's all three at the same time.
Yes, we do. Please don't stop. Yes, we do.
Weirdly, a lot of my fans are men. I wonder why.
Many people online began expressing their disappointment at Sydney Sweeney's career trajectory, confused at the extreme ads she was participating in.
Oh, Sydney Sweeney, here we go again, setting back woman 20 to 40 years.
So how did a young Hollywood actor who claimed she wanted to be taken seriously in the industry and didn't like how people sexualized her?
There was a storyline of what is happening in casting, the sexualization that's happening in casting, and then I see that happening to me.
Change into someone who appeared in countless ads and campaigns that sexualize her image.
Bouncy. Oh, bouncy. Bouncy and firm, really? Bouncy and firm? Really?
All the way to now launching her own lingerie brand. Is Sydney Sweeney simply attempting to take back her control? Or is she a celebrity sellout? Before we get into the Sydney Sweeney situation, let's discuss today's sponsor. I know it seems silly and reductive to say marriage is hard, but I personally kind of equate marriage to holding a mirror up to myself. Essentially, all of my childhood trauma and unresolved issues are reflected back to me in my relationship. And if my partner's dealing with the same, it can be hard to manage without outside help. That's why I don't really give relationship advice or put my relationship out there on social media. I really don't have the answers or tools on my own. But finding out about Paired felt like a no-brainer because Paired offers so many relationship tools in an accessible and welcoming way. Paired is a relationship app designed to help couples stay in love. Paired offers daily conversation starters and expert-backed advice to strengthen communication and deepen emotional connection, which are areas that can be hard to maintain on your own when stress gets high, life gets busy, and your relationship gets neglected. Instead of feeling like your relationship has to manage everything all on its own, with the help of Paired, the journey of staying in love is more enjoyable and more meaningful. We've been together for 6 years at this point. Our anniversary was just last week. For me personally, I was surprised how the daily prompts challenged me to think about my relationship in new ways, or opened me up to communicating with my partner and telling them about something that I've never really said before. I think this is because with Paired, you can find ways to make time for your partner every day. One of my favorite activities in Paired was the honeymoon journey, which is where both my partner and I every day participated in games, activities, and question prompts surrounding our honeymoon phase to essentially ask us what we liked most during that period in our lives so that we can incorporate more of those elements into our current daily lives. I realized personally that during that time, what I loved most was traveling locally with my partner and being more spontaneous, and will now try to find little ways to do that even in my busy schedule. And I felt like that was a pretty huge realization in my own life. Paired is backed by expert advice and research, and as a research fanatic, I love that in the prompts itself, it will provide the research so that you can learn as you're learning more about your relationships as well. So click my link below and get a 7-day free trial and 25% off Paired Premium so you can maintain and deepen your connection with your partner. One of the biggest conundrums I kept encountering throughout the making of this video is that I wanted to discuss Sydney's career and the many choices she made and the traps she may have fallen into without essentially taking part in shaming Sydney for having a body. A big way I felt like I could make that point really clear, that Sydney isn't inherently wrong for the body she was born with or the outfits she dresses in, but more so the projects she chooses to partake in and the statements she makes with her celebrity platform is by me myself making certain outfit choices in this video that essentially highlights that, particularly in the second half of this video. I hope that makes sense and that my intention with that comes through in this video. The message I really want to come across in this video is that you are more than your outward appearance, and if anyone is making you feel differently, don't listen to them, or you may find yourself with only an outer shell and nothing left inside. From the moment that Sydney Sweeney first emerged as a star to now, she's always been considered a controversial figure, mainly for the roles that she's taken and the way that the public has perceived them. Sydney Sweeney's rise to fame moment was her appearance on the popular show Euphoria. Yet, infamously, many of the scenes on the show showcased her body in revealing ways, which garnered mixed reactions by the public.
During a recent interview with The Independent, Sydney said she actually asked the show's creator Sam Levinson for some of her new scenes to be cut back a bit, explaining there are moments where Cassie was supposed to be shirtless and I would tell Sam, I don't really think that's necessary here, and adding he was like, okay, we don't need it. It was notable because it kind of flies in the face of a meme you might have seen on TikTok recently.
Take them out because I'm trying to see them. AM to the PM, double did them and I need them.
The thing about Sydney Sweeney is, like, a few years ago when, like, Euphoria was her main thing, I feel like the way that people talked about her was so weird. So I've been rooting for her, but unfortunately she has only chosen to lean into that weird and become weird herself.
Headlines determined there was too much nudity on the show, almost subtly shaming Sydney Sweeney for showing her body. A quote from the female lead read, "Sydney Sweeney's body has made more headlines than her talent. Sweeney's been typecast, dismissed, underestimated." The term celebrity sellout is not meant to critique someone for doing what they want with their body. The fact of the matter is, Sydney Sweeney often spoke about not wanting to be sexualized by the media, that her biggest desire through her career was to be seen as a serious actor.
But a veteran producer, Carol Baum, has slammed her looks and talent. Explain this girl to me. She's not pretty. She can't act. Why is she so hot to people?
Hey guys, it's Charlie Knapp from TMZ. Sydney Sweeney's acting coach is coming to her defense, saying she's a very talented actress, but she's not a supermodel.
But eventually, as her career progressed, she leaned into shock advertising, selling out the vision that she had of her acting career, her overall artistry, in order to essentially make money. As many of her new supporters say, Sydney Sweeney is just laughing all the way to the bank while people complain about the ads that she's doing. But is she potentially selling her soul in the process? So I want to analyze the trajectory of Sydney Sweeney's career and how the changes in social media, as well as the attention economy, could have potentially driven her towards rage bait brand collaborations. And many people believe that through Sydney Sweeney selling out her brand, she ended up buying into the male gaze.
Because Sydney Sweeney has always been packaged as a fantasy, not just as an actress, but a sex symbol. Hollywood constantly cast her as the hot girl, the spiraling girl, the desirable but damaged one. And when that becomes your brand, selling your bathwater seems like the next logical step. Apparently, female celebrities, especially Sydney Sweeney, get turned into objects. No matter what role she plays, the marketing always circles back to one thing: her body, her looks, her boobs, her sex appeal.
From what Sydney has publicly stated, growing up, she was an aspiring actor like many.
I think it was something that I always had in my bones, and something that I always wanted to do even before I knew exactly what acting was. I grew up with imaginary friends and imaginary worlds, and I think when I realized that TV shows and movies were basically these imaginary worlds brought to life, and that's a job that I could do, I begged my parents.
Her family was middle class, but going broke and sacrificing a lot financially to help her make it big. Eventually, Sydney did have her big break moments, so it seems her hometown and the stress of her upbringing haunted her like a ghost. Sydney Bernice Sweeney was born on September 12th of 1997. She spent her childhood in a small town near Spokane, Washington, on the border near Idaho. She describes her childhood as simultaneously idyllic and wholesome.
Where does Sydney Sweeney grow up? I grew up in Spokane, Washington. It's right on the border of Idaho and Washington, and it's a cute little town. I loved it.
An important context is that Spokane County is rather conservative overall, and is fairly known to be so, having voted Republican all but 3 times since 1948. Essentially, if you say you're from Spokane, to those familiar with the area, often has significant political context. Similar to saying you're from an area like Portland, Oregon. People often draw conclusions about a person depending on what area they're from or where they live, though of course that's not always the case. That being said, Sydney Sydney Sweeney has made some social media posts that have possibly showcased her and her family's political beliefs and caused some early controversy.
I'm from a town called Spokane, right on the border of Washington and Idaho. When people ask, where are you from? I say Washington. But when people ask, did you go to a Trump-themed party for your mom? I say Idaho.
In November of 2022, Sydney Sweeney faced her first controversy after sharing pictures online of her mother's 60th birthday. She captioned the photos, "No better way to celebrate my mama than a surprise hoedown." Her brother Trent also posted photos captioning them, "Yeehaw, happy 60th birthday, mom." In some of the photos, a handful of guests are wearing red baseball caps. These baseball caps hats looked pretty similar to MAGA hats, or hats associated with Trump supporters that bear the Make America Great Again slogan. Sydney's brother Trent later edited his caption to clarify that these hats did not specifically endorse Donald Trump because they said "Make 60 Great Again." People also pointed out that one attendee in Sydney's photos also appeared to be wearing a Blue Lives Matter t-shirt. As a result of all the backlash, Sydney posted onto Twitter, "You guys, this is wild. An innocent celebration for my mom's milestone 60th birthday has turned into an absurd political statement, which was not the intention. Please stop making assumptions. Much love to everyone and happy birthday, mom."
People were quick to point out that her dad is wearing a Blue Lives Matter shirt, along with family members wearing MAGA hats. They're mad that she literally took these pictures and posted them online herself. She then tweeted, "You guys, this is wild. An innocent celebration for my mom's milestone 60th birthday has turned into an absurd political statement."
For some reason, that statement almost feels like, you guys, this is so silly. Stop taking this seriously. Which, I mean, is definitely a response. Aside from speculation on Sydney Sweeney's family's political beliefs, Sydney Sweeney's mother, Lisa, has an interesting background. Sydney's mother is a lawyer, but apparently not just a lawyer in the cannabis industry, who is a huge advocate for the legalization of weed. She even calls herself Cannabis Addie.
What is your mom's name? Lisa.
According to the U.S. Sun, Sydney's mother, Lisa, worked for the law firm Hoban Law Group and in 2017 was part of a legal team which fought the DEA over its bid to outlaw hemp CBD, with Lisa being referred to as a hemp attorney. The family moved down to California, and before Californians voted in 2016 to legalize marijuana, Lisa was a huge campaigner. Growing up, Sydney Sweeney's family resided in a rural lakeside home that her family had inhabited for 5 generations. During her family's financial hardships, they had to give up the home. So once Sydney became famous, she bought it back.
I love this story. I heard that the house that you grew up in, which was like many generations of your family, y'all ended up losing that house.
Yeah,
and then you
so
got it back?
Last year, I called up the owners and I said I want to buy my great-grandma's house back.
Sydney also told Who What Where that she paid off her mother's mortgage. Sydney Sweeney initially grew interested in acting after she auditioned for an independent film that was shooting in her area. Initially, it seemed like her parents didn't take the idea of acting seriously. Her dad was in the hospitality industry, her mother a lawyer, and they grew up in a middle-class environment where education was more valued.
How do you go from Spokane to here, to Hollywood, to anything?
I was a little girl with a big imagination.
Yeah, a dream. Just a girl in a dream. Yeah.
Family sacrifices break me. Sydney blaming herself for the divorce. That's heavy, raw guilt. It's intense, highlighting fame's hidden toll. I feel this reflective sadness. Her drive to fix things through success is so human, yet tragic. Legally, bankruptcy is a tool. Smart context, but the emotional weight lingers. Injustice here. Society's pressure on young stars to succeed at all costs.
My parents thought it was like wanting to be a princess, that it wasn't real, you couldn't touch it, it was a smaller town.
But because acting was Sydney's ultimate dream, she put together a 5-year plan presentation to present to her parents.
And so I put together a 5-year business plan presentation of what could happen if they let me.
Did it take 5 years or?
It took a little longer.
I put together a 5-year business plan presentation of what could happen if my parents let me audition for this small movie that came to town.
Okay.
And they realized I was very serious about what I wanted and what my dreams were.
Sydney began to audition in her local area of Seattle and Portland for local commercial jobs. One of the first films that Sydney was ever in was a low-budget zombie movie.
I actually have a clip from the movie.
Oh, no.
I don't think the movie ever thought it would air on The Tonight Show, but here it is. Here it is. Z&D, Zombies of Mass Destruction, Sydney Sweeney.
Everything's going to be okay. All right?
Even though both of Sydney's parents seemed to have stable professions, they grew up in a stable home, surrounded by a family, Sydney alleged in interviews that they sacrificed all of this to move to LA to help her pursue her dreams. And ultimately, this put an immense strain on their finances and marriage. They ended up having to live in a hotel for 8 months. Sydney told The Times, "We lived in the Holiday Inn in Burbank, Northwest LA for 8.5 months, but it felt like my entire life." Sydney said her family lived in one room. "My mom and I shared a bed, and my dad and little brother shared a couch." Ultimately, her parents declared bankruptcy and their relationship started falling apart. And Sydney blames herself and her pursuit of an acting career as the catalyst.
Sydney Sweeney has revealed how trying to become an actress served as a catalyst for her family's downfall, culminating in her parents declaring bankruptcy and divorcing. The 27-year-old has bravely opened up about how her parents lost everything while supporting her childhood dreams.
Sydney's parents ultimately divorced and filed for bankruptcy in 2016. Her father isn't very involved in her life today, it seems, living on a ranch in Mexico where there's no internet and no cell service. In my personal opinion, though this may be really harsh, it is hard to believe, to me personally, that a lawyer and someone in the hospitality industry suddenly found themselves in a position where they were in extreme poverty, though of course that does happen for various reasons, and I'm not denying that by any means. What I am suggesting, however, and what could be more plausible, is that Sydney's mother, being a lawyer, could have possibly utilized bankruptcy as a tool to get the family out of debt, and of course that taking their daughter to LA constantly had added to this financial strain. A lot of wealthy individuals use bankruptcy as a tool to get out of debt, and you can never be too rich to file bankruptcy. That being said, oftentimes children feel like the hardships of their parents are their fault. On top of that, Sydney claimed that family members and friends would make her feel even worse when she would travel home to visit. She told Harper's Bazaar that friends and family members would ask her, "When are you going to do something real with your life and get your shit together and stop dragging your family through this?" She recalled, "It feels like shit and it's really hard when you're 17 years old, and that's what adults are telling you." So due to the strain her career placed on her parents, Sydney felt an immense pressure to make her acting career work. Sydney kept auditioning throughout her teens, taking really shitty projects, often for little pay, sometimes $100 a day, hoping it would be enough to keep her parents' faith and make the family whole again. "I thought that if I made enough money, I'd be able to buy my parents' house back, and that I'd be able to put my parents back together. But when I turned 18, I only had $800 to my name. My parents weren't back together, and there was nothing I could do to help."
I auditioned a bunch. I mean, I started when I was 12. I auditioned for everything you could possibly imagine, and then finally Everything Sucks and Sharp Objects on HBO happened when I was like 19.
Throughout her school years, while constantly auditioning and trying to make her dreams come true, Sydney attended Brighton Hall School in Burbank, California. Brighton Hall School is described as an independent school with affordable tuition, where you can do homeschool hybrid or learn online. While attending Brighton Hall, Sydney Sweeney took multiple languages and was on the robotics team, as well as the mathematics club.
Sydney Sweeney, valedictorian. I forgot about this.
Yes, I was valedictorian.
You'll find out very quickly, Sydney is very good at absolutely everything.
Stop.
Because of her financial situation, she allegedly used financial aid to help her pay for her private school and her college. In 2016, Sydney Sweeney briefly worked at Universal Studios, but left after being hired for an acting job. Early in her career, Sydney booked guest star roles in shows like 90210, Criminal Minds, and Pretty Little Liars.
You were on an episode of Pretty Little Liars.
Yes, I was fangirling. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm here. I love this show.
She then appeared in the Netflix series Everything Sucks. But Sydney Sweeney credits Sharp Objects as her first truly successful audition.
I booked Sharp Objects in April, and then I booked Everything Sucks in May, and I filmed the two shows all through the summer, and I alternated, like on the weekends I would go to Sharp Objects, during the week I would film Everything Sucks. And I think that really catapulted me to being able to be seen on a different level for like Handmaid's Tale and then Euphoria and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, I think those are the two projects that really stood out to me of this is finally my dream. Coming true.
In the 2018 HBO miniseries, Sydney Sweeney plays the role of Alice, a patient at a mental health facility whose death haunts the main protagonist. Shortly after, Sydney appeared on The Handmaid's Tale. In both of these projects, Sydney acted alongside established actors, making these projects larger, more esteemed, more notable, and boosting Sydney's career.
I hadn't seen the show yet.
Oh, that's
until
probably
I got
a good
the
thing.
audition.
And then, of course, did you read the book then? Or
When I got the call back, then I read the book that day, and I auditioned again, and I read with Max.
That's a lot to do in a short time span.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a lot of studying, a lot of homework.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that I knew how Eden would be.
By 2019, it was reported in an article by Variety that Sydney Sweeney signed with ICM Partners, an acting agency that merged with Paradigm in 2021. Sydney's been with the same agents, according to The Hollywood Reporter, her entire career. Jennifer M., Scott M., and Sunam S. are listed as Sydney's agents. She also has her own publicists at IMD Public Relations. Due to network scheduling, The Handmaid's Tale aired before Sharp Objects. This meant that The Handmaid's Tale was the first time that Sydney Sweeney was seen as an actor to a broad amount of viewers. Sydney played Eden, a teenage handmaid who was assigned to an arranged marriage to actor Max, who played Nick. After The Handmaid's Tale, it was the first time that Sydney was recognized in public, often by people who told her that they hated her character.
I was at a restaurant.
Okay.
And I was sitting there and I heard the table next to us talking about Handmaid's Tale. And I was like, oh gosh, like, oh no. And they started talking about Eden, and they were like, I hate her, taking Nick away from June. And I was like, oh my God, I'm leaving.
So from early on, much of Sydney's characters became known as the temptress, who's often exploited by societal elements around her, yet becomes the dislikable character. And for many actors, they often struggle to be seen as a different, separate identity from the characters they play. Or once they get known as a certain character type, that's all they ever get casted as. The Handmaid's Tale was nominated for 20 Emmys that year, after Sydney had a brief appearance on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
You know, when you have that bucket list of everyone you hope that you can one day work with, and then you just cross them all off on the same exact day for like a couple months, it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Sydney Sweeney landed the role as Cassie in Euphoria.
Do you remember the audition for Euphoria?
I put myself on tape with my mom in my mom's bedroom sitting on the couch. It was a made-up scene. It was always for Cassie. Cassie breaks my heart many times. Cassie's a very emotional girl. I love it.
From here, Sydney Sweeney's career and notoriety skyrocketed. Euphoria is an HBO teen drama created by Sam Levinson. The show premiered in the summer of 2019. To the media and to many viewers, the show completely shocked them through how much it would showcase teenagers in very vulnerable and revealing positions, or rather actors portraying teenagers. It's noxious and exploitative, but also horribly compelling, a greedily consumed guilt watch that went down easily but left us feeling uneasy on reflection, wrote The Guardian regarding Euphoria. Euphoria's influence on fashion, beauty, and the ways in which the show talked about mental health, identity, and relationships solidified it as a cultural phenomenon. On Euphoria, Sydney Sweeney portrays Cassie Howard.
I love playing Cassie, especially last season because she was so crazy. And as an actor, that's just so much fun to kind of stretch your legs and play characters that go insane. I always tend to drift towards characters who might read one way on a page, and I like to find the emotional depth to who she is and why she is. She's a beautiful, broken character.
In a cover story for The Hollywood Reporter, Sydney Sweeney spoke about how Euphoria's casting director didn't think she was right for the role of Cassie. But because Sydney's team at Paradigm had other clients who went in to read the part of Cassie, they already had the script. So Sydney filmed a self-tape with her mom and sent it in to the Euphoria team. And they booked her directly after seeing the tape, according to The Hollywood Reporter. The discourse surrounding Cassie is largely focused on how much of her body is displayed throughout the television series, and whether or not Cassie the character, or Sydney Sweeney herself, is objectified or exploited through the way the character is portrayed.
It was sort of like she's regurgitating all of the negative things as women that were taught culturally. You know, you're like... Completely. You're sort of, it's just like... She's like the cautionary tale of taking all that stuff in too much and putting too much
she
weight
doesn't
in
know
it.
how to communicate without showing her body. Like, that is a form of communication for her, and she was never taught that you did not need that.
The character Cassie feels almost obligated to use her body as a focal point in her relationships, and Sydney Sweeney seems to relate that as Cassie's way of trying to gain control.
I think that she feels safe and somehow she's in control when she puts herself in that space and in that situation. Because there is a manipulative side of Cassie, and I think she's found that through Nate.
That being said, Sydney's portrayal of Cassie was such a shock to her family members that they walked out in the middle of viewing the show. Sydney's mom was apparently the only family member who was aware of the explicit nature of the show, since she'd visited Sydney multiple times on set. However, her father was apparently blindsided. My mom visited me on set quite a few times, so she knew the story, Sydney said in an interview with NBC Today. I didn't prepare my dad at all. Her father apparently held a viewing party with her grandparents, but they were so shocked they had to turn off the show.
Yeah, I didn't prepare my dad at all. So he decided he was gonna watch it without telling me with his parents.
So your grandparents and your father pull up with some popcorn.
Yep.
Let's watch Sid and Euphoria.
Yep.
What happened next?
My dad and my grandpa turned it off and walked out, but my grandma's she's a big supporter of mine.
She's a fan.
She is.
Many critics and viewers of Euphoria often claim that Sam Levinson's direction often indulges in the male gaze, framing young women's bodies in a way that feels voyeuristic rather than purely narrative-driven. I know we've talked about it already, but the over-sexualization of Cassie makes me extremely uncomfortable. Did we need 15 pics, a video, and thousands of S scenes to understand her character? I'm exaggerating, but they really went overboard with it.
During a recent interview with The Independent, Sydney said she actually asked the show's creator Sam Levinson for some of her scenes to be cut back a bit, explaining there are moments where Cassie was supposed to be shirtless and I would tell Sam, I don't really think that's necessary here, and adding he was like, okay, we don't need it. It never felt like Sam has pushed it on me or was trying to get a scene into an HBO show. When I didn't want to do it, he didn't make me.
Yet after Euphoria, Sydney Sweeney's notoriety skyrocketed, and she won awards for her performance. Sydney essentially became a mainstream mega star, many people putting the label on her of being a sex symbol, with spreads in magazines, red carpet appearances, and a huge section of the internet swooning over her.
I have to be honest, Maddie might have gotten the last punch, but Cassie has never ever been happier.
Hey, it's Sydney Sweeney, and you're on set of my Glamour Women of the Year cover shoot.
But to many people, the lines between Cassie the character and Sydney Sweeney the actor began to blur, and what they viewed was the amalgamation of the archetype of the blonde bombshell. Sydney Sweeney's physical appearance, her blonde hair, blue eyes, curvaceous figure, has essentially become the focal point of her public persona, to the extent that her body has become subject to constant commentary across multiple platforms. Something I'm not trying to overly do in this video, but when it comes to Sydney Sweeney, it's almost like this curse that you can't escape that has haunted her throughout her entire career. On top of that, there's a strange sort of joking but not joking way that people often interact with Sydney's social media posts, in particular Sydney's male fans.
I bet so many women are gonna tune in this weekend.
Yeah, weirdly, a lot of my fans are men. I wonder why.
Male fans regularly express almost possessive and sexual commentary about Sydney Sweeney online. When Sydney posted a photo kissing her fiance, male commenters responded with comments like, "That last pic destroyed me. I dropped to my knees in the supermarket," and "On behalf of all men, we're devastated." Now, the male gaze describes how women in media are framed and posed in ways that prioritizes male desire over female self-expression. Often, women in the entertainment industry feel that their careers end up getting stunted or not respected because they're given roles that prioritize the male gaze over roles that allow them to really dive into their performance. Like when Jessica Alba played Sue Storm in Fantastic Four. For example, there's a scene where Sue Storm strips down into her underwear in order to turn invisible, something that's not necessary for the story but serves to sexualize her character.
Wow, you've been working out.
For Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, Jessica Alba asked director Tim Story to make me ugly, put dirt on me, so that her performance was judged on its substance, instead of her appearance. Instead, during emotional scenes, Jessica Alba was told to cry pretty. The director said that her tears were too real, and told her to tone down her emotional expression and let CGI add tears instead. Sydney Sweeney has expressed feeling frustrated at times with how people respond to her on social media.
There's so much that can just be misconstrued and spun for someone else's agenda, and I have to just understand that, and I can't control that because that would be really, really a lot of work and very difficult, and nobody actually, I think, even wants to listen to the truth.
Essentially, Sydney Sweeney has no control over her image or how people perceive her. Since being on Euphoria, it seems a large portion of the audience decided on the archetype they wanted to paint her as, whether she played into that or rebelled against it.
Very different than a lot of the characters that I play or the versions that you see me on carpets or in interviews, because I'm still made up. Like, this is still like the work version of me.
In interviews, Sydney has said she feels dehumanized when people sexualize her body, saying she has no control. Vox makes an interesting take on Sydney Sweeney. In their article, Sydney Sweeney and the Unsettling Legacy of the Blonde Bombshell. The bombshell's blondness classically means that the bombshell is white, in part because of the moment in which the archetype emerged. The bombshell is hypersexualized but innocent, powerful but naive. She's both an empowering image of feminine soft power and a regressive conservative ideal, unapologetically sexual in ways that play against puritanical norms. At the same time girlish, compliant, unthreatening. The power of her sexuality becomes unthreatening because the blonde bombshell is too stupid and naive to ever use it against a watching man. Yet through many of Sydney Sweeney's statements, it seems like this blonde bombshell archetype wasn't necessarily something she envisioned for her acting career, but more so something that ended up getting projected onto her, at least initially. I was highly sexualized in high school because I had boobs. It's kind of funny. What was being said about Cassie in Euphoria, the public then decided to do to me in real life, Sydney Sweeney told Elle, which I thought was so crazy because we were trying to show a character who was so hypersexualized and what could have been the cause and effect for her, and they just continue to do it.
Well, that's the thing. There was a storyline of what is happening in Cassie and the sexualization that's happening in Cassie because of her photos that got leaked and just the perception of others on her because she has boobs. And then I see that happening to me in real life, even though everyone watched Euphoria.
In an interview, Megan Fox was also asked if she had any advice for Sydney Sweeney and the ways in which media portrays essentially very attractive actors.
Your Night Teeth co-star Sydney Sweeney, she's currently dealing with what I feel like you probably dealt with, where a lot of people are, calling her a symbol and maybe even over-sexualizing her. What type of advice did you ever give to her, or did you talk to her about these things?
I haven't given her advice about that. She hasn't sought advice from me. I would gladly give it, but I don't know that I have any good advice to give. I'm not like, my answer is like, I've survived it barely.
Yet, especially in present times, it seems that Sydney Sweeney often strategically chooses when she wants to engage with this archetype for her own advantage and when she'd like to withdraw, change gears, which I'd like to point out is a privilege that many people in society do not have. Often, those who are stereotyped or only seen as one thing, whether you're given a bias, a racial bias, a narrative, ableism, hateful narratives by groups of people, you can never escape from that narrative. I do think that's something important to note when discussing this topic, especially in how Sydney Sweeney will often victimize herself and how the public sexualizes her while simultaneously playing into it. It evokes that feeling of how white women often victimize themselves and how they interact with their sexuality, because white women don't often interact with intersectionality. Intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Academic experts note that Sydney Sweeney appears to strategically engage with male attention. Media scholar Hannah Yellen observes that Sydney Sweeney acts as the ringmaster at this particular circus, orchestrating a specific display of femininity. Film studies professor Nathalie Wiedhaus suggested that Sydney Sweeney follows in the tradition of stars like Marilyn Monroe, who played with sexiness in a self-aware manner.
Hot. That's all I'm gonna say. Hot. The biggest misconception about me is that I am a dumb blonde with big tits. I'm naturally brunette.
At the same time, a big part of being objectified, of being a sexual object, is that you're not supposed to be in on it. You're not supposed to take control of the narrative or the joke that's on you. People sexualizing you is to make them feel in control. So the way that many people try to gain back that control is through them sexualizing themselves. They take back the narrative. People are going to do it anyways, so at least they have some semblance of control.
You don't find you get like nervous?
No. I think that I have gained so much confidence and self-awareness through Cassie. I think that the female body is a very powerful thing. I think that for me, I'm telling my character's story, and so I owe it to them to tell it well and do what needs to be done.
Gender studies experts have provided a nuanced analysis of Sydney Sweeney's position in contemporary media. Professor Shira Tarrant noted, "Our culture regulates women's sexuality, profits from it, and simultaneously shames them for capitalizing on it themselves. This creates a double bind where women face criticism regardless of how they navigate their sexuality in public spaces." Dr. Leora Tenenbaum, author of research on sexualization culture, observes a common narrative. "I might as well profit from my sexuality, since everyone else is already exploiting and objectifying me." This reflects a capitulation strategy, where women choose to monetize their objectification rather than resist it. Essentially, over time, this became the path that Sydney Sweeney took. She leaned into profit over performance, maybe thinking that no one cared about her performance anyways. In 2021, Sydney starred in the erotic thriller The Voyeurs.
To making wonderful, terrible decisions.
What seemed like a really cool concept ended up resulting in an average film. Yet, reportedly, due to Sydney Sweeney's popularity coming off of Euphoria, the film ended up exceeding Amazon Studios' expectations.
Describe your new movie, The Voyeurs, in 3 words.
Thought-provoking, shocking, fun.
Yet, some of the biggest takeaways from the film were that once again, Sydney Sweeney took off her clothes, further contributing to some of the narratives and stereotypes of Sydney Sweeney as an actor. Though the film itself aimed to have a unique spin, bringing back an old genre, the fact that it had a general erotic tone and featured Sydney Sweeney may have still contributed to people not taking her seriously.
Well, what's interesting is that this is an erotic thriller.
Yeah, and it's just
yeah.
This is so great.
It makes you like feel a certain way.
Yeah, it feels good.
In 2023, Sydney Sweeney appeared in the romantic comedy Anyone But You. Anyone But You featured Sydney Sweeney opposite actor Glenn Powell at a time when romantic comedies as a genre had lost their momentum.
Not like a we have to pretend to fall in love sort of thing. It's like just a small little degree changes where the games really escalate, and that's where I actually find it to be the architecture of the whole movie is like based on Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. So it's really classic and very elegant in its way, but it's also like fueled with all these like big fun set pieces and big laughs and all that stuff.
The games that they play are, I think, what you see and why
they're so perfect together.
Yeah.
Despite the film Anyone But You receiving mixed reviews from critics, the film itself was a box office success. The film grossed $220.3 million worldwide, with a net profit of $103 million.
Just passed the $100 million mark worldwide a month after its release.
To see box office not, stick but grow has been such a cool lesson that sometimes the genres that are forgotten are the ones that audiences are craving the most.
What's most interesting about the popularity and success of the film Anyone But You is that despite Sydney Sweeney's general notion that a large part of her fan base is men, much of Anyone But You's success was due to the women it was marketed towards. According to Deadline, female moviegoers were targeted with high-profile linear and streaming television, digital, social, radio, and custom media promotions. The film also used other unique social media strategies. What helped market the film was the rumored affair between Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell, both of whom already had partners both before and during filming.
If you thought these two were having an affair, you got played, as it's just been confirmed that the Sydney Sweeney-Glenn Powell rumors were made a key part of the Anyone But You marketing plan, and perhaps even masterminded by Sydney Sweeney herself.
Again, this contributed to the overall narrative of Sydney Sweeney being a temptress and having an overall dislikable character both on and off camera. It's also important to note that Sydney Sweeney's fiance at the time produced the movie with her, and he was there the entire time for the production of the film.
Is Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell related?
I really hope not.
No.
I don't think so.
I haven't done the 23andMe.
Should we?
No, they just got hacked. It's not the time to do 23andMe. There are better uses of your spit for... Let's do the next one.
Yet in April of 2023, fans started to question the nature of Glenn and Sydney's relationship.
It's the way that we look at each other, huh?
That same month, Page Six reported that Glenn Powell's girlfriend, who he had been dating for 3 years, named Gigi Paris, unfollowed Sydney Sweeney on Instagram. Meanwhile, Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney did a red carpet appearance at CinemaCon, where they appeared very flirtatious with one another, which added fuel to the fire. By the end of April, Gigi confirmed the breakup, posting onto Instagram, "Know your worth and on to the next."
Powell and his longtime girlfriend reportedly split during the film's press tour, which also contributed to romance rumors swirling on social media between the pair, even though Sweeney has remained engaged to Jonathan Davino, who's also an executive producer on the movie.
Yet Sydney said in interviews that it can be fun to play into the narrative surrounding Anyone But You, regarding the rumors that she was having an affair with her co-star. "It's a rom-com," she said in an interview. "That's what people want. Glenn and I don't really care. We have so much fun together and we respect each other so much. He's such a hard worker, and I'm a hard worker. We're excited for the press tour, and I literally just left ADR with him. We talk all the time. Like, that's really funny." This showcases another example of Sydney setting aside morals for the financial gain of a project. Her sort of faking a relationship or affair with Glenn Powell ultimately jeopardized his actual relationship. Though, of course, I'm not saying Glenn Powell doesn't have any culpability in that. He also was the person in a relationship that jeopardized that for what? Also participating in publicity? I don't know. Yet publicly, Sydney Sweeney shows very little sensitivity to that. Instead, she leans into the gossip to drum up more controversy so that the movie she's participating in can get more publicity and a bigger box office outcome. And Glenn and Sydney continued posting and engaging in content that fueled the rumors.
What's your name again? I want to make sure I'm screaming out the right one tonight.
Okay. You're so hot. My zipper's falling for you. Sydney is very easy to pretend fall in love with. The ideas of love are swirling through your head while these big romantic moments are happening, so sometimes hard to differentiate between real life and fake life.
By April of 2024, Sydney and Glenn Powell said that their off-screen antics played out exactly as they always intended it to. Glenn Powell told the New York Times, "That's people wanting what's on the screen off the screen. And sometimes you just have to lean into it a bit." And it worked wonderfully. Sydney is very smart. Sydney was also heavily involved in the marketing strategy, meaning that this entire rumored affair was something that she was possibly behind. I I was on every call. I was in group text chats. I was probably keeping everybody over at Sony Marketing and Distribution awake at night because I couldn't stop with ideas.
Here's what Sydney Sweeney had to say. I was on every call. I was probably keeping everybody over at Sony Marketing and Distribution awake at night because I couldn't stop with ideas. I wanted to make sure that we were actively having a conversation with the audience because at the end of the day, they're the ones who created the entire narrative.
On March 24th, 2025, people reported that Sydney Sweeney had deleted an Instagram photo carousel of her kissing her fiance. A source had allegedly told people that their relationship was on the rocks.
Well, it is the end of an era for actress Sydney Sweeney and fiance Jonathan Davino as she called off the wedding. Apparently, this was Sydney's decision and it was a long time coming. A source tells People magazine that Sydney has been focusing on work amid the end of her engagement and she's exactly where she wants to be.
On March 30th, it was alleged that Sydney Sweeney was attending Glenn Powell's sister's wedding. The following day, a source confirmed that Sydney and her ex-fiance had officially broken up. In June of 2025, Gigi addressed her breakup with Glenn on the Too Much podcast. I just wanted respect, especially if it's going to be public. Gigi said on the podcast about seeing the alleged rumors of an affair between Glenn and Sydney.
Yeah, no, we had issues. I think every woman has to listen to their gut.
Women's intuition is the most powerful thing in the world.
Immediately, I felt something odd. I just wanted respect, especially if it's going to be public. Like, don't make an ass out of me. Like, just don't make a fool out of someone you've been with for over 3 years, talking about forever with.
Right.
Just have some decency, you know?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it was like, well, work comes first. And if that's the case, power to you, that's your priority. I gotta walk away.
She told a story about flying to Australia where Anyone But You was being filmed, but she was allegedly told not to visit the set.
That phone call really is what broke me. I thought we had hope, like maybe when I got there that like things would maybe get better, but once I got that phone call, I just knew it was done. I had lost whoever that person was that I loved.
When that happened, that was 6 months after there had been that speculation in the media already.
I just knew when I found out that they were doing a movie together, I was like, yeah, I think they're both amazing actors.
Yeah.
But I went to Australia and it was very brief because of what he said. Like, I don't think you should come. I went anyways just to look him in the eye and break up with him. But then I was stuck there for 2 weeks doing my jobs. And there was a rule, like I was not allowed near set. I was not allowed anywhere near production. It was very bizarre.
At the end of the day, while Anyone But You could be considered a numerical success for Sydney Sweeney, when examining her brand and reputation and asking the question of whether this helped create a more positive or negative public narrative, it seems like the film and the controversy surrounding the film only added to the already established ideas people had made up in their minds about who Sydney Sweeney is, as both an actress and a person. In 2023, Sydney Sweeney portrayed reality winner in the crime drama titled Reality, which was a biopic.
I didn't know about Reality Story before, but I'm glad because I was able to go into this process with an open mind. I didn't look at reality as a headline. I just looked at reality as a human.
Reality was someone who printed and leaked a classified intelligence report. This report detailed Russian efforts to interfere with the 2016 presidential election, specifically attempts by Russian military to hack into US voting systems, software suppliers, and election systems.
So a lot of it was me learning about her history and her memories because that's what I love to do with my characters, is build their entire memory book. I've never really dove into playing a real-life character like this before. And I wanted to try and embody and get into her thoughts and her mind as much as possible. So we just talked about life and we talked about our love of dogs.
We could find all those commonalities between us that gave me so much more confidence, and I really have so much faith in her.
While biopics require good acting because there's direct comparable source material, it also could be argued that it doesn't require much creativity, depending of course on the biopic. You don't need to extend the imagination very much to write out a storyline or imagine what the character would do. So it's no wonder Hollywood churns out biopics like butter. Was that too salty?
125 pounds, you guys. Flatter me. Sorry, I have a sense of humor.
That was on your driver's license. That's right.
Okay, well, I lied.
Don't we all? Reality. What if I said that you printed out classified information
Reality premiered at the 73rd Berlin International Film Festival, and the film received critical acclaim. Sydney Sweeney, whose Emmy-nominated work in Euphoria was attuned to that show's maximalism, dials it down for her best performance yet, wrote Empire's Yana Murray.
I, of course, had seen Sydney on Euphoria, and I'd seen White Lotus, and I was a fan, but it was getting to talk to her, and she was so real and warm and super smart, and had taken in who reality was already.
Sweeney gives the best performance of her career, turning every small trembling and hesitation in the voice of Winner's Originals audio into a source of inspiration to bring a layered character to life, wrote Marco Vito Otto for Collider. Reality went on to win the 2023 Peabody Award, one of the most prestigious honors in media. That being said, when many think of Sydney Sweeney as an actor, this film does not come to mind as part of her discography. This creates a frustrating bind for Sydney Sweeney at this point in her career. This idea that people are essentially only paying attention to her when she's doing one thing, portraying one sort of character or archetype. In 2024, Sydney Sweeney appeared in the superhero film Madam Web.
Discovering you were always more powerful than you thought.
Madam Web is not directly tied to the existing Spider-Man films like those starring Tom Holland, though it is part of the Spider-Man's universe. The plan was for Madam Web to turn into a new franchise, yet what should have been the first film and the start of a new successful franchise turned into a disaster. Madam Web was completely
a bathwater soap? Shocking absurdity? Laughable, yet disturbing. My gut reaction, Exploitation flipped on its head, but at what price? It's dramatic irony. She reclaims control but fuels the male gaze she hated. Emotionally, it's exhausting. Feels like selling soul for virality. Key legal nod, consent matters, but cultural harm? Deep.
And by critics and the public. It essentially felt like a confused, poorly executed superhero spin-off.
Even with everyone saying how absolutely terrible Madam Web is.
This is one of the worst superhero movies that I've seen in a long time.
Madam Web very well might be the worst movie ever made.
This movie's terrible. Like in a way that almost makes you angry. Scientifically, it should be studied.
I don't know, I feel like it makes me want to go see it more, just to see for myself how bad this movie really is. What the was that? I don't know if I could even tell you what the worst part was. The dialogue was just so horrendous. The villain?
The film juggled too many things at once, and the plotline became unfocused. The CGI looked cheap, and the action sequences lacked creativity. The film was ultimately a box office failure, grossing $100.5 million worldwide against a budget of $80 million. Due to poor critical and commercial reception, chances of a sequel are significantly reduced. It's unlikely that the film is going to get a sequel. In Madam Web, Sydney Sweeney portrayed the character Julia Carpenter.
When you freaked out when you found out that you booked this role, what was going through your mind? And did you run out and buy every comic that you could to help you prepare for this?
I did. So the moment I found out, I was filming actually in Albuquerque at the time, and there was a small comic book store down the street from the house I was in. And I went straight to the comic book store and I scavenged for every single comic that Julia appeared in, and I bought all of them, and I just went home and I read everything I could. I was so excited.
But the film Madam Web ended up being a detriment to her overall image. While most actors have endured box office bombs at some point in their career, very few major Hollywood stars endure a box office bombing so big at such an early point in their career, especially from a film that was so highly anticipated. Yet Sydney Sweeney didn't seem bothered by the film's failure. Sydney Sweeney told GQ UK that she took on the role of Julia Carpenter with ulterior motives. To me, that film was a building block. It's what allowed me to build a relationship with Sony. Without doing Madam Web, I wouldn't have a relationship with the decision makers over there. Everything in my career, I do not just for that story, but strategic business decisions. Because I did that, I was able to sell Anyone But You. I was able to get Barbarella.
Madam Web is my first ever studio project, studio film that I ever got cast in. And I am so thankful to Sony because it was such a building block for me. And while I was filming that, I was actually building the packages for both Immaculate and Anyone But You. And I then took Anyone But You out once I put the whole package together and put the pitch together. And I called up Sony and I said, hey, I have this movie. We're filming together. Let's build a relationship. And that's how Anyone But You got made. And I would never have been able to do that without Madam Web.
Sydney Sweeney choosing to star in Madam Web, a film it sounds like she didn't particularly believe in, and a potentially career-damaging film also Sony could greenlight her other film, Anyone But You, is another example potentially of Sydney Sweeney momentarily setting aside her beliefs, her artistic vision, for a long-term payoff. This makes you question how many actors accept questionable projects to build connections. In the end, Sony took on the project Anyone But You, which ended up outperforming Madam Web. Back in 2020, Sydney Sweeney had spent the pandemic creating her own production company, which she called 50/50 Films. The focus of the company was on bringing women-led stories to the forefront.
50/50 Films. And is it true that one of the reasons you named it that was because that you believe it takes multiple people, that there's a shared credit, you don't do anything alone? Tell me about the name, because I really appreciated the intention behind it.
I truly believe in collaboration. I think more minds are better in a room than just one. And I believe everybody deserves a seat at the table. And so I hope that with my company, it allows other people to have a voice and be able to just be a part of the bigger picture.
And giving Sydney Sweeney the opportunity to try as many characters as she possibly could. Actors often start production companies as a way to gain creative control over the projects they take part in. In Hollywood, actors are often cast into certain roles based on typecasting, marketability, or studio decisions. But when they produce their own content, they can develop stories that reflect their artistic interests, or explore characters outside of their usual image.
Can you talk a little bit about sort of the rationale behind launching it and your experience of having, these 3 years?
Yeah, I love the business. I love being a part and involved in as many aspects as I possibly can. And I love reading. I love just building worlds. So when I started seeing books in my head and imagining what it would look like as a movie or TV show, or reading scripts that then couldn't get off the ground and me being like, this needs to be made, I was like, I'm just gonna see what I can do. And it's a fun game to play. It's a really interesting business.
Has it been rewarding in the sense of I remember reading something about you wanting creative autonomy in that sense?
Very much.
In 2014, Margot Robbie and her husband founded the production company Lucky Chap. This helped her produce films like I, Tonya, Promising Young Woman, and Barbie. And all of these films received critical acclaim and various Academy Award nominations. Dwayne Johnson was determined to be the strong, intimidating side character for his acting career. However, through his production company 7 Bucks Productions, he's the lead in every action blockbuster. It could be that, as Sydney has sort of expressed, she became tired of being typecasted in roles that essentially demanded her to be in revealing positions, and wanted to prove herself in other artistic roles. Starting her own production company was Sydney Sweeney's attempt to gain control back over her career trajectory. After Euphoria, people were only casting her as one thing, refusing to see her in any other type of role. As Sydney said in an interview, I see it all the time where casting directors don't think I'm right for a role because they watched Cassie in Euphoria. A woman's body is beyond empowering and beautiful and sexy and all the things. I think one day I'll have control of the narrative of my body. I'll take the power. Maybe Sydney wanted to cast herself in the roles she wanted, since no one else was. Again, I do feel it's necessary to point out, Sydney wanting to be seen as more than the image she was given. You would hope it would wake her up to the fact that there are people around the world who are seen as something they're not, simply because of their appearance or the position they were born in. Back in 2014, when Sydney was just starting her acting career, she auditioned for a role in a film called Immaculate. However, the project fell into purgatory instead of entering production. After Sydney's breakout role in Euphoria, she purchased the rights to the screenplay.
But I called my team and I was like, I want to find this script and I want to see if I can do it myself.
My dad has no idea what Immaculate is, what it's about, what he's about to see.
She likes to set me up for things that
Yeah, it surprised me. I sat down to watch Euphoria once. That didn't go so well.
Like the gore?
Yeah.
Like when I went on a killing spree?
Oh, yeah.
I know,
Exactly. Yeah.
What'd you think of the ending?
Strong.
Strong.
Yeah.
Immaculate was filmed in February of 2023, and in 2024, the final product was released. Immaculate is a psychological horror film that follows Cecilia, a young woman played by Sydney Sweeney, who enters a convent seeking spiritual clarity after a traumatic loss.
I know God saved me for a reason, but I guess I'm still searching for what that reason is.
It's a miracle.
Many critics essentially credited Sydney Sweeney's performance for saving the film. Roger Ebert wrote a critical review of the film but praised Sydney Sweeney's performance. Through it all, Sydney Sweeney holds the camera. Her desire to challenge herself is admirable, and she goes dark places here, especially in an unforgettable final scene that could make viewers leave this one thinking they had just seen a good movie instead of a good ending on a bad one. But Immaculate was, objectively, a success. The film had a budget of $9 million and grossed $35 million worldwide, which is fairly successful for an indie film. Through films like Reality and Immaculate, Sydney Sweeney seemed to get everything she wanted. Her acting was respected by critics. She wasn't being overly sexualized by the media. And yet, soon after these films, Sydney Sweeney began making more and more public appearances that doubled down on her controversies and sex appeal. Why is that? On March 2nd of 2024, Sydney appeared on Saturday Night Live.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sydney Sweeney!
SNL is a long-running American late-night sketch comedy and variety show that first premiered on NBC in 1975. Over the decades, the show has been a launch pad for comedians looking to cross over into Hollywood. Many famous comedians like Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, and Will Ferrell all got their start on SNL. Celebrities also appear on SNL as guest hosts. Saturday Night Live is another platform where celebrities can show a different version of themselves than the usual characters they're typecasted as, and can promote their latest projects. Yet during Sydney Sweeney's Saturday Night Live appearance, a lot of the sketches were yet again surrounding her physical appearance, like a Hooters skit that played into the stereotypes of the hot, dumb blonde.
How much tips did you make? 41, 32, $36,000. Jesus. What? Is that low? I wouldn't say low.
Saturday Night Live has a usual format, with the host starting a show with a monologue. Sydney Sweeney's monologue began with her acknowledging her breakout roles in Euphoria and Anyone But You.
You might have seen me in Anyone But You or Euphoria. You definitely did not see me in Madam Web. But I do have a new film coming out called Immaculate. I play a nun, so it's perfect casting.
Sydney also joked about her alleged affair with Glenn Powell, claiming that she's happily engaged. But when she pointed at her fiancé in the crowd, Glenn Powell was sitting there instead.
I'd say the craziest rumor I've seen is that while I was filming Anyone But You, I was having an affair with my co-star Glenn Powell. That's obviously not true. Me and my fiance produced a movie together, and he was there the entire shoot. He even came here tonight to support me. Can we cut to him?
While many of the skits played into the roles that Sydney Sweeney had been typecasted as, a lot of the jokes also felt redundant. We've seen them before. The bimbo stereotype, like in the Hooters skit where Sydney Sweeney makes a ton of tips even though she's a really bad server.
I'm so sorry. I had to run to the bank. Here's your tip, new girl.
Hi, boys. Who wants a refill? Oh my God. I am such a klutz. I am so sorry.
It's okay.
Sydney Sweeney's appearance on SNL received mixed reviews, people saying that the skits relied too much on her physical appearance. Essentially, it's okay when the media constantly points out Sydney Sweeney's physical appearance, but when she makes jokes about it, then it's lazy, then it's redundant. I could kind of see, to be fair to Sydney, how she could develop a sort of confusion. Online, everyone's constantly pointing out Sydney Sweeney's appearance and making jokes about it, but they don't want her to become self-aware and make the jokes about it herself, or capitalize capitalize on her appearance in a self-aware way. It's almost like Sydney Sweeney herself is not allowed to be in on the jokes that people are making of her. And when she takes ownership of herself and all the jokes that people are making, well then all of a sudden people become aware of how lazy the jokes are, how redundant they are, how debasing they are, when they weren't aware of this before. During an appearance on the Fly on the Wall podcast, SNL member Bowen Yang defended Sydney Sweeney. Bowen Yang suggested that Sydney herself insisted that they use her rack as the base of their humor. Bowen said that Sydney was an example of a host who came in and understood how she was being consumed and perceived already.
I think she's an example of a host who came in and understood how she was being consumed and perceived already. Like she came in, she was like, please everyone make jokes about my boobs. Like she was practically begging everybody to write.
Say no more.
Say no more.
Sydney also defended her appearance on SNL in an interview with GQ, saying, "There's so many people out there who are like, oh, she's famous because she showed her boobs. You just learned the system. You can try and fight it, but they just fight back. People are going to attack you for standing up for yourself." It seems like at this point, Sydney Sweeney had become fed up with trying to prove to the public that she was not the blonde bombshell that they had stereotyped her as. This is the very stereotype that at times has granted Sydney Sweeney so much privilege, but also pinholed her and made her feel trapped in the expectations that others had of her. So eventually, it seemed like she decided to give up in trying to be anything else or prove herself. Instead, she learned the system and leaned into what people thought of her as, at least when it came to marketing and promotion. Whether it outraged them or they liked it, at least they were paying attention. And in today's engagement economy, that's all that really matters, right? All publicity is good publicity.
Sydney, what is your reaction when you see Sydney Sweeney is trending on social media?
I'm like, oh, what for now?
Oh God, what's she done?
Well, how far can that go before people get bored? Before people stop paying attention? And will the audience that's paying attention to that sort of marketing really go see all of your serious roles, your biopics? In May 2024, it was announced that Sydney Sweeney would star in a biographical film about former professional boxer Christy Martin.
Emotions were running high as Sydney Sweeney stepped out with Christy Martin. The 27-year-old actually put on 30 pounds to portray the professional boxer in Christy, out November 7th.
I mean, the fact that she's standing here right now and the whole world's gonna get to see her life and everything that you went through and everything that you pushed through and you fought for, it's so inspiring, and I'm incredibly honored.
Christy Martin is recognized as one of the most influential figures in women's boxing, credited with bringing the sport into the mainstream at a time when women in the sport were struggling to gain recognition and legitimacy.
And so it was Don King who puts you on a pay-per-view fight, if I'm not mistaken. You're the first female, correct? To ever have that time. Did you realize at the time the impact you were making?
Had no idea.
Christy Martin fought through an era when women in combat sports were generally dismissed, and her success directly challenged gender stereotypes.
You on my left, fighting out of the red corner, wearing pink trunks with white trim, fighting out of Orlando, Florida, by way of Mullins, West Virginia. She weighed in at the lightweight limit of 135 pounds even. With a record of 34 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws, she has 25 wins coming by way of knockout. Ladies and gentlemen, recognized as the women's pound-for-pound champion, introducing the coal miner's daughter, Christy Martin.
Christy Martin also endured years of abuse in her marriage to her trainer, Jim Martin, who nearly killed her in 2010 when she tried to leave him.
Yeah, November 2010, November 23rd, 2010, I went to my house, and after being away for a couple days, and I knew that I was going into a bad situation. I knew that this was the day that Jim was going to kill me. He stabbed me like 3 times on my side, puncturing my lung. We fought, we struggled. I tried to get away. He left me laying on the floor for a long time.
Christy is also a queer woman who wrote about her journey in accepting her sexuality in her book, Fighting for Survival. Later on, she married Lisa Holloway, a former boxer as well. Sydney underwent a huge transformation for the role. When she came on board to play Christy, she went through 3.5 months of training. She also gained weight for the role, which she's discussed in numerous interviews. Actually, that seems to be what majority of the interviews center on. Sydney's training consisted of weight training, kickboxing, and then weight training again in the evening. In interviews talking about what she needed to do to prepare for the role, Sydney often talks about her body transformation. My body was completely different. I didn't fit in any of my clothes. I'm usually a size 23 in jeans, and I was wearing a size 27.
I had to get all new jeans. I didn't fit in any of my clothes. I'm usually like a size 23, and I was wearing like a size 27. My boobs got bigger.
Were you worried that somebody might smash your face?
No, because I get really into it. I mean, I always would have like bruises all over me.
I had a nutritionist work with me, as well as a weight trainer and a boxing trainer, and we upped my calorie intake, and I started taking a lot of protein shakes and supplements, and kind of just constantly always eating because we were so active. I was constantly like burning it all off at the same time, so keeping it all up was quite a challenge.
Sydney could have possibly pursued another biopic for her acting career because she wants the general accolades that come along with the genre. Biopics have been considered one of the most reliable paths to winning an Oscar, so many actors seek them out with the idea of winning an award in mind. Playing a real person, especially someone who is historically significant, can give actors and performers the opportunity to show a transformation. They master mannerisms and different physical changes through makeup, style, training, etc. As Backstage noted, when it comes to the Oscars, voters lean on performances that feel objective. It's easier to evaluate whether an actor looks and sounds like Queen Elizabeth, Winston Churchill, Judy Garland, than to assess a fictional work. Between the years 2000 and 2019, over half the Best Actor winners were from biopics, like Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles in Ray.
And the Oscar goes to Jamie Foxx and Ray.
This is the first Academy Award and second nomination for Jamie Foxx. He's the 10th person to be nominated in both acting categories in the same year.
Daniel Day-Lewis as Abraham Lincoln in Lincoln.
And the Oscar goes to Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis is the first actor to win 3 Oscars in the lead actor category.
And Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody.
The Oscar goes to
Rami Malek.
This is the first Oscar and nomination for Rami Malek.
While of course I don't want to totally knock biopics, which I kind of feel like I'm doing in this video, I can't even begin to imagine how hardcore of a process it would be to take on the role of another person. I do also want to note that when Sydney had the opportunity to create her own production company, have full creative control, instead of taking on more creative projects, she decided to do more biopics because it seems that's how other stars gained more recognition. It does seem like sometimes through the roles that Sydney chooses, she's looking to what other actors have gained success and recognition from. And essentially, through Sydney seeking external validation and approval for her career, Sydney will never find her own compass. She'll always be letting others steer her and sacrificing her morals in pursuit of what she can gain, whether that's attention, recognition, financial opportunity, instead of an inner satisfaction over your own artistic pursuits. In a world where actors are making less and less financially, it seems that this has put Sydney in a desperate position with no true north. In a 2022 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Sydney did not hold back when it came to the money she made during acting. They don't pay actors like they used to, and with streamers, you no longer get residuals. The established stars still get paid, but I have to give 5% to my lawyer, 10% to my agents, 3% or something like that to my business manager. I have to pay my publicist every month, and that's more than my mortgage.
Oftentimes when we think about making it big in Hollywood, we think about these highly glamorous lifestyles filled with the glitz and the glam. A sense of almost limitless wealth to some of the most famous people in entertainment. But it seems that, like in most things in life, that may be too good to be true.
At this point in Sydney's career, she had already booked Euphoria, where she was paid $350,000 for 8 episodes in the first season. Although Sydney's salary for season 2 hasn't been confirmed, an agent source for Us Weekly claimed that she's expecting a huge pay raise. For the first season of White Lotus, Sydney Sweeney allegedly made $40,000 per episode, totaling roughly $320,000. Although her income for projects like The Voyeurs and Night Teeth remain undisclosed, it's presumed that Sydney made roughly $1 million by the end of 2022. Though at the same time, due to her appearance on Euphoria, Sydney became a mega star, a known media figure. It seems that because of that, and because of how widely viewed Euphoria was, Sydney thought maybe she should be making more, especially off of her brand and image. So to diversify her income, she started doing brand deals, which of course in the world of social media is certainly not unusual. Sydney was becoming a known name, a star, and her image gained a lot of attention, which in turn benefited the brands that she worked with. And these brand deals started off relatively tame and within the world of fashion and beauty. Sydney worked with Miu Miu, Laneige, and Armani Beauty.
Bouncy! Bouncy! Bouncy firm. Bouncy and firm, really?
Bouncy and firm. Really?
Laneige Water Bank Blue Hyaluronic Cream Moisturizer gives me up to 100 hours hydration and dewy skin, but it's supposed to be yellow.
Sydney claimed that she took these brand deals because if she just acted, she would not be able to afford her life in LA. I take deals because I have to, she said. That being said, there are many actors who live modest lives and are able to live within their means while taking on smaller projects. So it does feel like what Sydney is essentially saying is, once she rose to fame, she expanded her lifestyle to match. And when big movie deals aren't coming in, she has to do brand deals to keep up with the lifestyle.
It was a doozy seeing her, or just seeing that Hollywood Reporter interview where she pretty much exposed her privilege and how she lacks a self-awareness when it comes to finances. I would highly recommend checking that interview yourself, but to quickly summarize it, she pretty much talked about how she is frustrated with Hollywood pay and how actors and actresses aren't getting paid as much as they used to, and also how she can't afford to take a 6-month break from acting.
The New York Times detailed how, depending on their level of fame, a celebrity can make anywhere from $50,000 to many millions of dollars off of a brand deal. On the lower end are social media posts. A celebrity or artist with a significant following can earn anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 off of a single social media post. If their following is in the multiple millions, however, a stylist said that this can reach up to 7 figures. But it doesn't end there. Slightly more lucrative are red carpet appearances. On the higher end are more elaborate contracts that require the celebrity to do more than just show up to a red carpet event more than twice a year. A deal worth around $3 million, for example, could involve appearing in advertising campaigns, attending events like store openings, being dressed for the red carpet, wearing the brand out more casually for paparazzi shots, and creating several social media posts. Brands like Chanel are rumored to have paid Timothée Chalamet $35 million to appear in a Martin Scorsese directed commercial and do some interviews for Blue Day Chanel. These are all a lot of unseen costs when it comes to brand deals, which directly affect someone like Sydney Sweeney's salary. And she's done a lot of these things, working with fashion brands to attend red carpet events, appearing in high-end beauty and fashion ad campaigns and commercials. So when Sydney Sweeney claims that she's struggling financially and almost implies that she's living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make it in LA, that's a little hard to believe. Yet despite all of this, Sydney Sweeney told The Hollywood Reporter that she does not have the income to take a 6-month break from acting and that no one is supporting her. I don't have someone supporting me. I don't have anyone I can turn to pay my bills or call for help, Sydney said. And I guess this makes me wonder, where is all this money going?
She did buy a house, an expensive house, without having a decent safety net. It kind of gives me the same energy as a kid fresh out of college, just got their first corporate job and bought a brand new BMW with their big kid money just because they could buy it. But just because they could buy it doesn't actually mean they could afford it.
Sydney Sweeney's net worth currently has been estimated at approximately $40 million. While that was not her net worth at the time that she made these statements, her net worth was rapidly rising. Yet throughout Sydney Sweeney's entire career, whether it's during her childhood, when the facts show she was at least raised middle class, all the way to now, recent days, Sydney Sweeney has made statements acting like she is living in poverty. While certainly there are people who deal with anxiety surrounding finances, I'm one of them, coming from an unstable childhood myself, which can severely affect the way that they're able to realistically view their situation. At this point, when you are a mega celebrity, a multi-millionaire, it feels tone deaf to make statements like this. And also like an inability for Sydney Sweeney to view her circumstances in comparison to the larger American lived experience. When Sydney Sweeney says she doesn't have someone supporting her, as an adult living in America, she acts like she's the only one experiencing that. When most people living in the US, living in the world, who are adults, don't have someone they turn to pay their bills. That's kind of the sad reality of being an adult. You kind of have to figure it out yourself. Sydney revisited her remarks with Elle for their 2022 Women in Hollywood issue. I was asked if I wanted to have a family, and I said yes. Then I was asked why I didn't have one yet, and I was like, I don't have time to even take a 6-month break. I don't have time to be able to start this family. I'm working so much and I'm focusing on that right now. And so it was kind of skewed with the public and taken out of context, which was insane to watch.
Sydney Sweeney says she sometimes still struggles to pay her bills. Sydney was on the cover of The Hollywood Reporter. In the interview, she said she wouldn't be able to afford a 6-month break from acting. She talks about how 18% of her income goes to different agents and lawyers, a publicist, and that she also has a mortgage to pay. This is what I found on Google, but I know these are wrong, so it's just an estimate.
Many comments under this TikTok were essentially Sydney Sweeney saying she can't afford to take a 6-month break. Yeah, most people working can't afford to take 6 months off. If they do take a long gap off of work, it's usually because they're forced to, and it puts them under immense financial strain.
People on the internet were mad, pointing out, yeah, we can't afford to take 6-month breaks either. And according to Elle, Sydney Sweeney made about $350,000 for season 2 of Euphoria and is worth about $4 million.
However, the following year after these statements, in 2023, Sydney's earnings saw a substantial increase. Sydney reportedly earned $2 million for Anyone But You, plus an additional $250,000 for being an executive producer. Before shooting Anyone But You, she shot Reality and went home with $65,000 for that one. Despite Madam Web being reportedly a commercial failure, Sydney earned $750,000 for the film. While Sydney's earnings for Christie haven't been disclosed, she was reportedly paid a whopping $7.5 million for her role in The Housemaid, which is coming up later this year. Like most wealthy celebrities, Sydney Sweeney started buying a lot of different real estate properties. In 2021, the New York Post reported that Sydney Sweeney purchased a 3,200 square foot mansion in the Westwood neighborhood of Los Angeles. In 2022, Sydney repurchased her generational family home. Then in 2023, she bought a 4,477 square foot fixer-upper in Bel Air, worth $6.2 million. In June 2025, Sydney purchased a 7,720 square foot beachfront mansion in the Florida Keys for nearly $13.5 million. Made up of 6 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, the home overlooks the ocean and a protected canal. All of these massive movie deals, and yet Sydney Sweeney continues to act as if she has no money, as if she's desperate, in need to cash out on her fame now. So instead of building up bigger and better movie deals off of her talent, her dreams of being an incredible and respected actor, the very thing that she always wanted for herself, that looked like it was taking off like never before, Sydney started doubling down and cashing in on more and more brand deals. On top of that, these brand deals became more and more sexualized and more extreme, diving headfirst into rage-baiting, chaos marketing tactics, as if Sydney Sweeney fully gave up on the public ever taking her seriously.
Wow, that jeans pun hits like a gut punch. It's clever but loaded, right? Seeing Sydney start so innocently, then dive into this controversy, makes me feel this mix of frustration and empathy. It's like watching someone chase dreams, only to get tangled up in propaganda. As a viewer, it stings because it echoes how society twists beauty into something divisive. Why push buttons like this? It leaves me uneasy, questioning if fame warps us all.
While Sydney's recent endeavors have been accused of pandering to the male gaze, she has done quite a few collaborations in the past with brands that have a predominantly male audience. For example, Sydney has worked with Hey Dudes in ads that talk about how she's a car-loving, overall-wearing country dude who's definitely not like other girls.
I'm such a country dude, I like to have an engine wherever I go. I'm such a country dude, I taught my guy friends how to change a tire. I'm such a country dude, I wear overalls more than dresses. Why are you a country dude?
Sydney did a campaign with Ford to launch Sydney Sweeney Ford denim coveralls, since she has a love of cars and has worked on her Ford Mustang herself, as well as posted about it on social media. Her love of cars supposedly began when her mom forced her to drive a manual growing up, and had her do spontaneous, stressful car things like randomly change a car tire on the side of the road.
So I've been working on a 1969 Bronco.
How do you know how to do these things?
Tough love from mom. When I was young, my mom only let me drive a manual.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to drive an automatic.
Okay.
And then when I got my permit at 15, we were driving one day down the road and she told me to pull over. I was like, why do you want me to pull over? And she goes, you gotta change the tire. I'm like, why do I gotta change the tire? And she kicked me out of the car and wouldn't let me get back in it until I changed the tire. And I'm like screaming and crying, saying, you're the worst mom. And I had to change the tire.
Now that love of cars morphed into Sydney's brand and brand deals, and her line with Ford began selling out fairly quickly.
I come from a family of mechanics, and I learned how to drive on my great-grandpa's F-100. I think that's when I first fell in love with Ford. I was the only girl in the shop. And once I finished my Bronco, I had to get a Mustang, of course. I hope other women see my passion for cars and want to follow their own passions too.
Yet this year, something must have been different with these ads that caused the most outrage and publicity. While, of course, the American Eagle ad is a beast on its own entirely, when it comes to the other ads as well, in my personal opinion, and the outrage and publicity surrounding Sydney Sweeney, oftentimes those aspects are associated with media pieces that sexualize her.
Bouncy and firm. Really? Let's face it, guys only want one thing. It's determined by my genes. Hey, eyes up here.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body? Watch.
She's literally Cassie, and it's honestly sad. That's probably how she got famous. I don't know. Blame her managers and the companies that chose to advertise her that way. She's just a puppet. Dr. Squatch is a men's grooming and personal care brand founded in 2013. Similar to the Old Spice ads, if you're familiar with those ads, Dr. Squatch also does outrageous parody ads. Like in 2018 when they came out with the campaign, "You're not a dish, you're a man," starring comedian James Schrader.
But you're not a dish. You're a man. Switch to Dr. Squatch Natural Soap for Men.
The ad generated over 120 million views combined on YouTube and Facebook. It also resulted in a 30x increase in shares in Dr. Squatch, as the brand went past 100 million in annual revenue. Then in 2022, the brand made headlines with its ball care campaign, starring Nick Cannon.
I've officially got the most valuable balls in the world.
Nick Cannon is widely known for having many different children, 12 kids with 6 different women. So including Nick Cannon in an ad about ball care was essentially using outrage marketing tactics or chaos marketing, and it seemingly worked, earning 11.5 billion earned impressions. Then in October of 2024, Dr. Squatch teamed up with Sydney Sweeney to be part of their Body Wash Genie campaign. One particular ad of the campaign series featured Sydney Sweeney in a bathtub while talking to the camera, explaining that Dr. Squatch body wash isn't for boys, it's for men.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body? Watch. Well, you can't have it. Because this isn't for boys, It's for men.
She's not only a rising star, but someone who resonates across broad demographics, especially with women who are often the ones purchasing grooming products for their male partners or kids, said John Ludick, the brand vice president of marketing. The ad definitely received a mixed reaction, with many people wondering why Sydney Sweeney, who was a mega star icon at this moment, doing huge movie deals in one of the most popular TV shows, subjected herself to being sexualized by a relatively unknown brand at the point, at least compared to Miu Miu, a huge fashion brand that she had already been working with. But there were others, mostly men, who fully supported the campaign and joked that they needed Sydney Sweeney's bathwater. So in response to these comments, Sydney Sweeney teamed up again with Dr. Squatch, and they released a limited edition exclusive bar of soap that included Sydney Sweeney's bathwater.
You guys only want one thing?
And that's apparently Sydney Sweeney's bathwater. You asked for it, so you know what we did? Our team and Sydney kept her bathwater from this bag and made soap with it, with Sydney's permission.
On my way to go pick up Sydney Sweeney's bathwater. Bag secured, boys.
Smells like a man. Not bad, just like, I wasn't expecting it to be manly. I don't know. It's Sydney Sweeney's bathwater. Boom. This is it. No, there's no hole in the middle of it.
The thing is, if they apparently included Sydney Sweeney's bathwater at the time that they filmed this ad, they must have already been planning to do this before people commented that they wanted this, if that makes any sense. When you view Sydney Sweeney participating in an ad like this willingly, out of context, well, to many, their reactions were just not on her side, blaming her for the ad and the downfall of society, essentially.
So you're telling me that the actress who did full rape scenes while playing a high schooler is now selling their bathwater in soap and essentially being eggs work adjacent 5 years later? What? What's the state of our nation? Oh, the humanity.
There was also a rumor that there was a hole in the middle of the bar of soap, which people online quickly began to believe, but was very easily disproven if you just did a quick online search. And it seemed as if many people couldn't make up their minds as to whether or not Sydney Sweeney herself was in the right or wrong for taking on this campaign. Yet all of the blame, either way, was pointed in Sydney Sweeney's direction, which I think is very interesting.
It's a bar of soap with a hole in it.
Right.
And it's got her bathwater in it, and it's like she's collabed with them.
I mean, male audience,
Absolutely.
like I'm not going to want to bathe in Sydney Sweeney's bathwater. Give me Channing Tatum's, I will buy it.
There's a Reddit comment that explains an interesting take and another perspective on this situation. This is, to a lesser extent, a form of S-work, though again much lesser. In S-work, women temporarily sell use of the body, their images, their time, etc. They do these things generally for survival or monetary gain or both. Sometimes they participate in it consensually, and sometimes they do not. Men pay for pleasure, control, taboo, hatred for women to get experiences not otherwise available to them, to get experiences for more beautiful, younger, illegal ways not otherwise available to them, etc., to use women. Oftentimes, the mere availability of this S-work leads people to state that women are leading the charge on immoral behaviors or encouraging it by making it available and profiting off of it. This is bull. S-depravity has always been around, and men will take from women with or without consent. Men have been sexualizing Sydney Sweeney since before she was legal, posting countdowns online for her 18th birthday. They've been using her image, her name, her existence without her control or monetary gain for years. Would I try to take back a semblance of control by selling my bathwater to losers who've been creeping on me since I was a child? Probably not, but do I understand it? Yes. Does that make her just as wrong for profiting off the way men sexualize her? Not in my opinion. Sydney Sweeney said in a press release announcing her new bathwater soap, "When your fans start asking for your bathwater, you can either ignore it or turn it into a bar of Dr. Squatch soap." In an interview for GQ, Sydney explained the process of making the soap. "When we were at the Dr. Squatch shoot, they had a tub for me, and I actually got in there and I took some soap, and we had a nice little bath and they took the water, so it's my real bathwater. Dr. Squatch Squatch only made 5,000 bars of soap, and the soap was available for purchase on June 6th. The company also held a giveaway of this soap from May 29th to June 5th. It's weird in the best way. I love that we created something that's not just unforgettable, it actually smells incredible and delivers like every other Dr. Squatch product I love, Sydney said. And here's the thing, should the discussion be surrounding the one woman who sold bathwater soap, or the thousands of people who sold out the product? The Dr. Squatch bathwater collaboration became a viral phenomenon that sold out immediately, and the products were even resold because it was limited edition, from prices that ranged from $119 to $1,600 for a bar of Sydney Sweeney bathwater soap. Isn't that more of the story here? And it seems like women's responses to Sydney Sweeney's most recent campaigns have been more critical than males' responses. Polling data shows that men are more likely to view Sydney Sweeney favorably than women, and this gender divide persists across political lines. And this perception was reinforced when Sydney Sweeney blamed women for criticizing her bathwater soap, stating that it was mainly girls making comments about it. When Sydney Sweeney spoke with the Wall Street Journal, she claimed it was mainly the girls making comments about her bathwater soap collaboration, which I thought was really interesting. They all loved the idea of Jacob Elordi's bathwater, referencing the viral scene in the 2023 Saltburn movie. That being said, before all of these campaigns, when looking back on social media, which isn't necessarily indicative of the general public consensus, it does seem like a large portion of women had a positive view of Sydney Sweeney. Women often came to her defense when she was being objectified online, like when the ambiguous men were complaining about Sydney Sweeney's cellulite.
Okay, so at this point, we've obviously all seen this photo Sydney Sweeney posted. First of all, hot. Second of all, the comments on Instagram, they're gross. I have heard that there's men out there that are like, yeah, I mean, she does have cellulite. Like, I do see a little bit of cellulite there. Are you kidding me? If you think this is a bad case of cellulite, I honestly do not want to live in a world where men complain about Sydney Sweeney's cellulite. Like, it's not looking good for us, ladies.
Or when Sydney Sweeney did a collaboration with Frankie's Bikinis.
You guys seen Sydney Sweeney's collaboration with Frankie's Bikinis?
I have. No. Wait.
Dear God.
I love her. Like, her boobs are so great. Like, I'm so sorry.
She is stunningly beautiful in a way that I can't even describe.
Though a big portion of criticism, especially in the last few weeks, as more and more of these campaigns have come out, has been that Sydney Sweeney relies more on sex appeal than actual talent. Producer Carol Baum's publicized statements exemplify this. Carol, having produced famous works like Buffy the Vampire, felt obliged to comment on Sydney Sweeney and stated, "She's not pretty, she can't act, why is she so hot?" It seems like at times there are broader concerns about women in media and society who advance their careers through their physical appearance rather than actual skills and talent. But this feels like a new version of she slept her way to the top, except now it's she just became successful using her body and looks, not her talent. I guess I'm wondering if women who think Sydney Sweeney can't act and is only popular because she's hot are equally falling for these rage bait tactics, because they aren't necessarily considering her other projects where she wasn't marketed in this way. Essentially, they're viewing Sydney Sweeney in the same way that men are. They're viewing her as a sexual object, but instead of them themselves sexualizing her, they're discounting her because she's being sexualized. On June 26th of 2025, Sydney featured in a Baskin-Robbins ad and launched the Sweet on Sydney menu.
Summer's looking sweet at Baskin-Robbins. Try my new Sweet on Sydney menu, available at Baskin-Robbins nationwide.
Baskin-Robbins has been a part of my life since I was a kid. It's where some of my favorite memories were made. I still go multiple times a week, Sydney said about the collaboration. The ad for the campaign starts with a dreamlike montage. Wind is blowing through Sydney's hair, she's throwing sprinkles around and licking an ice cream cone.
Is that Sydney Sweeney?
The Baskin-Robbins ad did mostly go under the radar due to the backlash from the American Eagle campaign. But those who did see the ad expressed a strong dislike, especially since it was around the same time of the American Eagle campaign, which prompted Baskin-Robbins to turn off their social media comments. On July 23rd of 2025, American Eagle debuted a fall denim campaign starring Sydney Sweeney. The target audience for American Eagle skews towards teens and young adults. This group is at a stage in their life where they're forming their identity and personal style. I mean, same, but teens are also usually heavily influenced by pop culture, social media, and celebrity trends. That being said, this ad became the most controversial moment in Sydney's career to date for, well, everything done and said in the ad.
From parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has.
Hey, eyes up here.
Sydney Sweeney has very keens.
First of all, I'm gonna call out American Eagle. American Eagle, you sell jeans to teenage girls. And you also sell jeans to preteen girls. Go into the American Eagle store, tell me you don't see a bunch of preteens walking around. Why do you need to sexualize jeans so much? There was a time in history, this ad thinks it's appropriate to say that, to put a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, fair-skinned woman in an ad and say she has good jeans. It literally is giving the same, I don't know if I can say this, but it's literally giving Nazi propaganda.
This uncomfortably reminded me of Brooke Shields' Calvin Klein ad.
Genes are fundamental in determining the characteristics of an individual and passing on these characteristics to succeeding generations. And finally, by natural selection, which filters out those genes better equipped than others to endure in the environment.
When Brooke Shields was only 12 years old, she was considered the most beautiful face of the 80s. In November of 1980, Brooke Shields participated in a Calvin Klein ad.
You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing.
Calvin Klein jeans.
Brooke has since stated that she, of course, was naive to the phrase and didn't know what it meant. But of course, the adults producing the commercial weren't naive to all of this.
This has to do with power relationships and power imbalances. Child molestation is on the increase. Images are filtering into the mainstream and thereby legitimizing this kind of thing.
Calvin Klein is more than just a successful fashion designer. Some feminists say his commercials are an outrage. Their seductive, soft sell just a masquerade for soft.
I try to provoke, I try to interest, I try to excite people. I don't deny that. And I will take chances with advertising. And I will maybe sometimes step beyond what is considered to be good taste. And maybe I do stir up some trouble, but it works.
No ambivalence on your part about using very young teenagers?
So I'm a bad boy. What do you want?
The comparison is not one and the same. When people say that the American Eagle ad reminded them of the Brooke Shields Calvin Klein ad, they mean that American Eagle used an adult, Sydney Sweeney, who is consenting and aware of the context behind what she's saying, to invoke a past predatory ad of the 80s. Especially given American Eagle's main demographic, that's a little strange. 1. The ads are a callback to the Brooke Shields My Calvins ad campaign from the 80s that did a much more sophisticated jeans play on words, and that ad campaign got a lot of criticism at the time for sexualizing Brooke Shields when she was 14-15 years old. So it also seems like a weird choice of an ad to poorly mimic. Worth adding to this point, American Eagle's target demographic is 15 to 25-year-old women, which makes a callback to a sexually charged ad exploiting a teenager with a long history of being sexualized and groomed by the entertainment industry extremely weird. However, the ad doesn't just sexualize Sydney Sweeney, following in the trajectory of many of Sydney Sweeney's ads and the disturbing Brooke Shields ads. The main slogan of the American Eagle ad campaign leaned heavily in another direction, stating Sydney Sweeney has great genes. It seemed to be a play on word for Sydney Sweeney's great genes, i.e. her genetics. Although some people doubted the connection, American Eagle seemingly confirmed it themselves. So many people criticized Sydney Sweeney herself for promoting eugenics. eugenics. Of course, it's hard to say what level of involvement Sydney had or even awareness of the way in which the ad would be promoted and portrayed, in all fairness. But unlike Brooke Shields, who was underage and didn't understand the context, historical meanings behind the words she was saying, Sydney Sweeney is a mature adult, valedictorian of her high school. She should have understood the context. While she didn't script out or plan the ad, she said the words, and should have known to a certain extent how it would be portrayed. What comes along with intellect is being held accountable because, well, you should have known better, or you knew exactly what you were doing.
You know, I actually think about it a lot, of being able to escape and find a new land and start anew, and what that experience would be like.
In a video posted on the American Eagle Instagram, Sydney stands in front of a poster of herself that says, "Sydney Sweeney has great genes," spelled with a G, but the word jeans is crossed out and placed with jeans spelled with a J.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
Another video clarified, even doubled down on the eugenics angle.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
These videos incited a lot of backlash from people on social media. It would be blatantly ignorant to say that there isn't a lot of political tension going on, specifically in the United States right now, and that advertisements like this specifically lean into that political tension and divide, inciting rage on one side to drum up more publicity for their brand, and also pandering to another side to try and generate sales for their dying brand. But objectively, you have to wonder, what was American Eagle, the brand itself, trying to promote in its messaging here? What ideologies was it inherently standing behind? Many people accused American Eagle of promoting white supremacy and eugenics, even Nazi propaganda. Columbia University professor Sayantani described the campaign as deeply infused with eugenic messaging, connecting it to anti-immigrant and pro-eugenics messages. Eugenics, especially when tied to white supremacy, is the use of pseudoscientific ideas about improving the human race through selective breeding, sterilization, and controlling who can reproduce. And the implementation of eugenics theory has caused widespread harm to marginalized populations throughout history. The movement gained traction in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Some people in positions of power believed that involuntary sterilization, segregation, and social exclusion would rid society of individuals that they deemed to be unfit. The theory was so prevalent in America in the 1900s that it was supported by President Woodrow Wilson and prominent families like the Rockefellers. It was also applied through forced sterilization laws. These policies, unsurprisingly, targeted people of color, the poor, prisoners, and those in mental institutions. Eugenics also shaped immigration policy. The Immigration Act of 1924, also known as the Johnson-Reed Act, favored immigrants from Northern and Western Europe. Hitler has also credited the United States for many eugenics concepts used during the Holocaust, which is why often using eugenics messages, you are called a Nazi. It is important to point out that the CEO of American Eagle is Jewish, which is why the more likely scenario is that this campaign was meant to outrage people. It was targeted rage bait. The advertisement also, on top of all of this, received criticism for appealing to the male gaze. The camera zooms in on Sydney Sweeney's body, and then she says, "Hey, my eyes are up here." Of course, this, to many critics, reinforces this idea that Sydney Sweeney is only valuable when she's sexualizing herself. Essentially, the marketing team didn't think it was valuable enough just to have Sydney Sweeney in the ad. They needed to push the limits, have her say outrageous things, and expose her body, zoom in close on it, button down her jacket, etc.
My body's composition is determined by my genes. Hey, eyes up here.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
Yet proponents of the ad felt like it was bringing back sexy ads of the past, like the infamous Carl's Jr. ads, which influencer Alex Earle had participated in a similar style to earlier this year.
Okay, so that's hot.
Essentially, let's make ads hot again. Though in the early 2000s, these were all skinny white women who were deemed as hot to a more certain white male audience. And maybe now more voices are speaking out saying those ads might not be hot to everyone. Detractors of the ad also felt like Sydney Sweeney was being sexualized for no purpose, essentially. The jeans themselves weren't hot. Let's just be honest here. It was an awkward scene in an empty white room meant to make you feel uncomfortable. And the entire nature of the ad being sexy doesn't make sense when you look at American Eagle's demographic. According to demographic insights from SoulStim, about 76% of AE's audience are female and 24% male. That being said, a similar thing could be said in advertisements in the past, like with the brand Victoria's Secret, that would essentially cater their advertisements to what many would call now the male gaze. Yet Victoria's Secret was a brand selling to women. The entire controversy of American Eagle and Sydney Sweeney appears to be the polar opposite of that experienced by transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney promoted Bud Light in an Instagram video, but the ad drew a ton of backlash from conservatives who viewed the ad as a political standpoint. So much so that the entire brand's sales took a major hit.
So, I kept hearing about this thing called March Madness, and I thought we were all just having a hectic month, but it turns out it has something to do with sports. And I'm not sure exactly which sport, but either way, it's a cause to celebrate. This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money too. Love ya! Cheers! Go team! Whatever team you love, I love too. Okay.
In the next month, it was noted that the collaborating company made 26% less sales, while their mothership, Anheuser-Busch, dipped by 1%. Later in the same month, it was reported that sales dipped by 18%, and the company lost its status as America's #1 seller. Even worse, when Dylan herself was receiving extreme transphobia, Bud Light never stood by her and distanced themselves from the ad, since it hurt their brand.
One thing I will not tolerate people saying about me is that I don't like beer, because I love beer and I always have. I built my platform on being honest with you, and what I'm about to tell you might sound like old news, but you know that feeling when you have something uncomfy like sitting on your chest? Well, that's how I feel right now, so this feels like the right thing to do. I took a brand deal with a company that I loved, and I posted a sponsored video to my page, and it must have been a slow news week because the way that this ad got blown up, you would have thought I was like on a billboard or on a TV commercial or something major, but no. It was just an Instagram video. I'm bringing it up because what transpired from that video was more bullying and transphobia than I could have ever imagined. And I should have made this video months ago, but I didn't. And I was scared, and I was scared of more backlash, and I felt personally guilty for what transpired. So I patiently waited for things to get better. But surprise, they haven't really. And I was waiting for the brand to reach out to me, but they never did. For a company to hire a trans person and then not publicly stand by them is worse, in my opinion, than not hiring a trans person at all, because it gives customers permission to be as transphobic and hateful as they want. And the hate doesn't end with me. It has serious and grave consequences for the rest of our community. And you know, we're customers too. I know a lot of trans and queer people who love beer. To turn a blind eye and pretend everything is okay, it just isn't an option right now.
It's always a risk for a company to align themselves politically or work with certain celebrities who could be deemed as controversial, because it's essentially a brand looking for a new audience based on a celebrity's audience base or that political party's base, which also means, of course, alienating other customers. And it does mean the brand is taking on a literal sense of having a brand identity, identifying with a group or party in order to cater to that party when it comes to sales. American Eagle posted a statement where the retailer said that the campaign is and always was about the jeans, her story. We'll continue to celebrate how everyone wears their AE jeans with confidence, their way. Great jeans look good on anyone.
Not gonna lie, I really think they could have just posted a denim square. If you've been following this saga, you've probably seen that American Eagle has put out a statement regarding their campaign with Sydney Sweeney. I'm not sure if this is really damage control, but they do want to point out that this campaign is and always was about the jeans. Brew, when was this? This was really about her genes and her story.
Wild. I didn't realize that American Eagle genes were passed down from parents to offspring, often determining things like hair color, personality, and even eye color. But interestingly enough, American Eagle anticipated receiving backlash. In the run-up to the ad, the company's chief marketing officer told trade media outlets that the ad included clever, even provocative language and was definitely going to push some buttons. TikTok creator Be Better Company, who I believe has had a few controversial takes, so I'm not aligning with all of Be Better's takes, made a post about American Eagle's decision to release this ad that I thought was interesting to include in this video. Be Better talked about how in the weeks leading up to this campaign, JP Morgan was preparing to downgrade the American Eagle stock. Essentially, it could have been that American Eagle felt a certain desperation to act fast, do something big, bold, and brash, and grab people's attention like never before.
In the weeks leading up to this very controversial campaign, JP Morgan was actually preparing to downgrade the American Eagle stock to a classification called underweight. What this means is the stock was not performing, nobody was buying it, their inventory was through the roof, they weren't selling products. So in other words, the American Eagle executives were completely panicking because this was an existential crisis, and at the end of the day, you can't just change your financial fundamentals overnight. But what you can change is the narrative.
Be Better's conclusion was that American Eagle intended to release a controversial ad.
The only real card that's left to play is narrative arbitrage. And this refers to leveraging cultural volatility in order to manufacture temporary financial momentum. So it is incredibly obvious to me that this was not about revenue. This was not about brand loyalty. This was not about appealing to their target demographic. This was about intentionally weaponizing attention in order to trick the financial markets into thinking something big was happening, even though it wasn't.
American Eagle utilized Sydney Sweeney for this plan because she was already somewhat controversial and had participated in a few controversial ads around the same time.
She is someone that I like to call a chaos mascot. She was not chosen because she is universally loved. She's not. She was not chosen because she is politically safe. She's not. She was chosen because of her ability to spark cultural discourse and volatility, which is currently the currency of this new attention economy that we live in.
Be Better argues that the tagline that American Eagle used for its campaign was, at its core, inherently meaningless, meant to drive us down the rabbit hole of endless insanity over what their true intentions were for the ad. When if you really break down the vernacular of genes are inherited, my genes are blue, it's really just nonsensical, meant to confuse the audience, to make them wonder over it when the purpose is really just a giant nothing burger, all just to drive your engagement, the last-ditch effort of a dying company.
So American Eagle was smart enough to perfectly calibrate the ad to ensure that it was ambiguous enough while still retaining those unsettling cultural undertones that provoked such a strong reaction in people. There were the retro visual, there was Sydney posing like a suburban dream, and then of course there was the line, "It's meaningless, but it feels like it means something." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call strategic ambiguity.
And the entire ad became a trap, no matter which way you perceived it. A line in the sand to be drawn off of a line of dialogue that had no meaning to begin with. Everyone becomes more divided over the ad, and the more you argue over the American Eagle campaign, the more you're promoting American Eagle for them.
It sort of tickles the subconscious, it plants a little bit of unease, which is then very easily shrugged away because, hey, it's just a pun. And that's the trap. If you're offended, you're reading way too much into it. And if you're confused, you just simply didn't get the joke. But either way, you're engaging in it and they win. But regardless, both sides thought that they were making individual points when in reality, they were reading off a script that was written for them by the brand, and they weren't making points. They were actually just doing American Eagle's distribution for free.
And the more intense the backlash is, the more outrageous those reacting to this ad seem. American Eagle is able to cry victim, even though they were the ones that planned the whole thing. And Sydney Sweeney is associated in all of this. Because Sydney Sweeney is the face of the brand, she's the one receiving the backlash. And she's also able to cry victim as well. Or other people are also viewing
the Euphoria scenes? Heart-wrenching. Sydney's raw vulnerability there contrasts so sharply with the public's objectification. It's infuriating. I react viscerally. Like, how does one cope with being reduced to body parts? That irony of fighting sexualization while roles demand it. It's a trap. Emotionally, it reminds me of lost innocence, the quiet rage of being undervalued. Key moment, her asking to cut nudity. Powerful stand, yet overlooked.
her as essentially a martyr for participating in an American Eagle campaign.
The more intense the backlash becomes, the more innocent the brand looks, because people on social media have an inability to form a nuanced opinion, and everything is so extreme that then American Eagle is able to release a statement, which they did today, exactly as I predicted they would, basically saying, hey everybody, relax, it was just a jeans commercial. And then all of a sudden, American Eagle is no longer the manipulator, which they absolutely are, but the victim of a woke, overreacting mob.
Be Better's conclusion was that ultimately American Eagle benefited from the campaign, but Sydney Sweeney's reputation might have taken a hit, and that ultimately her audience, even her supporters, are becoming tired of these constant campaigns.
Question the wisdom of cashing in on her relevance so early and so quickly in her career. She's quite literally the face of any brand that will have her, and you can only experience these types of levels of controversy so many times before people, and by extension brands, stop trusting you and wanting you to be the face of their products.
That being said, people also love a good martyr. They love a good victim. If a certain audience thinks that their opposing side is attacking a figurehead unnecessarily, bullying them, turning them into a victim, they in turn might become intense supporters of that person. Yet overall, it gives the impression that Sydney Sweeney has little shame and no problem stooping low for an advertisement. You want to use someone for your next big shock campaign? Sydney Sweeney's already divisive, so she's your person. But overall, is Sydney Sweeney selling out through doing this? Just a few years ago, Sydney Sweeney was speaking out about her distaste of the way that the media portrays her, how she's excited to have her own media company so that she can be taken more seriously. Now it seems like she's thrown all of that out of the window. Whether or not the media essentially created this monster or played a big role, I think it's fair to say that Sydney Sweeney sold out. And as the attention economy encourages this type of behavior, it seems like more and more celebrities and more brands might start doing it, leaning into rage bait. And while there was an initial outrage surrounding the American Eagle campaign, as time went on, it seems that less and less people found it that outrageous. Polling data collected by The Economist and YouGov found that only 12% of Americans were upset by the campaign or found it offensive. In terms of politics, apparently 57% of Republicans believed the ad was a smart move, and 22% of Democrats agreed. You can see this play out with a TikTok. In a university, people are walking by and choosing whether Sydney Sweeney's ad was sinister or iconic. About half of the people chose sinister and half of the people chose iconic. Of course, it's impossible to know whether or not this TikTok clipped these people out of context or how many people actually participated. And then as more and more time went on, more people began to say that the backlash was an overreaction. People also tried comparing the ad to ads like Beyonce had done with Levi's. The thing is, Beyonce never referred to her genetics in this Levi's jeans ad, even though Beyonce was clearly naturally blessed in so many ways, but that's a different topic entirely. Because of this American Eagle campaign, Sydney Sweeney's image has also become entangled with broader cultural and political debates. She's gone from someone who avoided speaking on politics and saying not everything has to do with politics at her mom's 60th red hat birthday party to becoming a symbol for a very intense political statement. The American Eagle campaign could also be compared to remarks that Trump made in 2020 about how Minnesotans had good genes.
So all of these ideas are also deeply connected to this political moment, because the leader of our particular country right now has been on the record many times talking about racehorse theory, talking about the fact that you just have to have better genes to get ahead. And he's also talked about immigrants and others having bad genes and therefore polluting the American kind of body politic.
The controversy became even more amplified when Sydney Sweeney's voting record became exposed. Based on publicly available voting records, ABC News pulled the voting records of Sydney Bernice Sweeney in Summerland Key, Florida, where she purchased a mansion in 2024, who registered as a Republican in the state and has the same birthday as the actress. After finding out about her political stance, Donald Trump voiced his support for Sydney Sweeney. Oh, now I love her, Rad. Is that right? Is Sydney Sweeney? You'd be surprised at how many people are Republicans. That's what I wouldn't have known. But I'm glad you told me that if Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican, I think her ad is fantastic. Following day, Trump further praised Sydney. Sydney Sweeney, a registered Republican, has the hottest ad out there. Go get him, Sydney. Being woke is for losers. Being Republican is what you want to be.
If Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican, I think her ad is fantastic.
And Sydney Sweeney herself has yet to dispel any of these public narratives. Well, yeah, maybe it's not the best for people to assume Sydney's political beliefs without her explicitly stating it. Sydney has a platform and every ability in the world to speak out and clearly state what she believes in. Sydney has also taken every opportunity to speak out in the media and in interviews about how she disagrees with the ways that she's been sexualized online. And yet the moment that this all occurs, Sydney is completely silent. Even before Trump spoke out, Vice President J.D. Vance spoke about the ad on a political podcast. It seemed that he claimed that the Democrats are calling Sydney Sweeney a Nazi as a sort of political strategy, but that it is inherently making them look ridiculous.
My political advice to the Democrats is continue to tell everybody who thinks Sydney Sweeney is attractive is a Nazi. that appears to be their actual strategy. I mean, it actually reveals something pretty interesting about the Dems, though, which is that you have like a normal all-American beautiful girl doing like a normal jeans ad, right? They're trying to sell jeans to kids in America, and they have managed to so unhinge themselves over this thing.
On the surface, J.D. Vance's statements came out of nowhere, since no Democratic figures had really commented on the ad. But this also drives a further divide. If you're concerned about the messaging behind the ad, you're one of the ridiculous people overreacting. If you agree with the messaging, then you should go buy American Eagle jeans. So who exactly is winning here? Despite all of the controversy, American Eagle gained 142,000 followers on Instagram from the time the ad released to mid-August. On August 1st, the day the brand issued its statement, it gained over 18,000 followers. The following day, it amassed over 25,000 followers, and on the third day, it gained 15,000, according to Newsweek and Social Blade. If anything, Sydney Sweeney has been impacted by this the most, losing thousands of followers on Instagram with her comments filled with people saying that her jeans are kinda mid. Though it seemed like American Eagle planned the ad, even planned for the backlash, Sydney Sweeney was the face of it, so therefore she was deemed the most culpable by the public. Her reputation forever affected by the beliefs that she aligned herself with. There is no reason for American Eagle outfitters to apologize or backtrack, because some woman on TikTok, who probably never bought the brand anyways, don't like it, said Jennifer Say, the former president of Levi's. Jennifer also claimed that she's been pitched this exact campaign many times over the years. It's an obvious one. Play on words, nothing more. While marketers agreed that the ad was distasteful, many people thought it wouldn't have a long-term impact on the brand either way. But the weirdest thing is, when researching all of this, there's been a ton of mixed messaging on whether or not the campaign strategy actually worked and paid off for American Eagle, which is concerning because these reports will probably determine whether American Eagle themselves and other like-minded brands will continue down this road of rage bait, outrage marketing strategies. Yet no one can make up their mind on whether or not this is an effective strategy. Initially, upon launch of the campaign, there was a 60% jump in American Eagle website visits, which signaled a strong online engagement. But retail analytics from Passby using AI and in-store sensors revealed a 3.9% drop in store visits in the first week after the campaign launch, followed by a further 9% decline the following week. Passby's marketing chief, James Ewin, attributed this drop in foot traffic to reputational or cultural backlash stemming from the campaign. When a brand sees momentum stall so sharply, it often reflects a reputational or a cultural factor cutting through to consumers. Consumer Edge VP, head of insights for the CEIC, Michael Gunther, said the campaign's a useful reminder that viral moments don't necessarily translate to immediate consumer behavior. Yet more recently, American Eagle has reported a surge in new customers since the ad campaign. American Eagle Outfitters shares have surged 26% in pre-market trading, the company said. The company said that customer counts were up more than 700,000 since the launch of the campaign, and the ad has generated 40 billion impressions. Shares of the company rose by as much as a third after it announced higher than expected quarterly sales. That being said, there are also reports that overall sales for the company are still down. Will continual outrage marketing and celebrity collaborations bring the company back up to record numbers? A representative for the brand said that they plan to continue working with Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney Has Great Genes is not going anywhere. Sydney will be a part of our team as we get into the back half of the year, and we'll be introducing new elements of the campaign as we continue forward. If this is a strategy that works, will more and more brands lean into outrage marketing to try and anger people as much as possible or play into the current political divide and climate, pandering to one audience to alienate another? Sure, you may like it if a brand is aligning with your beliefs, but at what cost to the general health of the public ecosystem? And also, it's not like the brand really truly cares. They just want your money. But coming off of the American Eagle controversy, Dunkin' Donuts also released an ad with the actor Gavin Casalegno, I hope I pronounced his last name right, where he talked about his jeans helping him get a golden tan, like Dunkin' Donuts' new golden drink.
Look, I didn't ask to be the king of summer. It just kind of happened. This tan? Genetics. I just got my color analysis back. Guess what? Golden summer. Literally. I can't help it. Every time I drink a Dunkin' Golden Hour Refresher, it's like the sun just finds me. The Golden Hour Refresher. Only at Dunkin'.
The comments and reactions were incredibly mixed. Some people were saying his jeans help him tan, what's the big deal? Others saying that advertisements that are continually talking about this topic are kind of disturbing. Conversely, Gap worked with Cat's Eye to release a jeans line. The funny thing is, whether you're supporting Gap because you believe more in the messaging of their ad, or American Eagle, you're still buying into marketing in some way. A brand played on your emotions and the political climate, used a celebrity's name and image, all to sell you a product. And somehow the main winner of this is jeans? Honestly, there's this weird medium blue jeans color in all of these ads that I just don't really like that much personally. I thought the all jeans look was called a Canadian tuxedo, but now it's the pinnacle of American patriotism. On top of that, people are flocking to defend Sydney Sweeney more strongly than ever before, using the slogan in the ad comments, saying that she has great jeans. In comments of social media posts of hers, red carpet appearances, great jeans, love her a lot, such a beauty. America loves her jeans. A woman with great jeans made a commercial for great jeans. Haters gonna hate, but she on top. That girl got great jeans. Nothing but love. Where's her jeans? She quickly becoming liberals' favorite punching bag. Someone heckled Sydney Sweeney as she entered the premiere for her new film, Americana. There is a lot of mixed debate about how much of a role model celebrities should be, how much they should utilize their platform for good or positive messaging. I do think personally that being a celebrity means you have a certain amount of influence. People follow you, idolize you, look up to you, so what you say and what you do matters to a certain extent. It influences culture. It influences our current climate, and all of that does matter. With great power comes great responsibility, right? Yet at the same time, the heckler in the video says, stop the ad, and is saying that to Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney is not involved in American Eagle, the company. I don't think Sydney Sweeney would have the power to stop the ad. American Eagle is plastering this campaign on tons of billboards, and it doesn't seem like Sydney has much control over that. So once again, her brand in the public eye has completely gotten away from her control. The very thing she was trying to do, it seems. Steal back control and the narrative of her brand, and the ways in which she was being in the media, once again spun out of her control. But for all of the things that Sydney Sweeney has participated in, most of all this American Eagle campaign, should Sydney Sweeney be cancelled? I'm certainly not the one to answer that question. I don't know Sydney Sweeney's character and how she'll grow as a person beyond this, whether or not she will grow as a person, but compare someone like Sydney Sweeney to a famous celebrity like Brad Pitt. Obviously, the two aren't a one-to-one comparison. Brad Pitt has done a lot of steamy, hot media appearances, like this Levi's commercial. He's participated in acting roles that are very serious and ones that have sexualized him in some way, even just through participating in the acts on screen. Though this is all simplistic, and I'm sure many people will debate me on that. But most of all, Brad Pitt has been accused with very credible evidence of abusing his family.
A 2020 Instagram post made on Father's Day has resurfaced and been published by the Daily Mail. Happy Father's Day to this world-class. You time and time again prove yourself to be a terrible and despicable person. You have no consideration or empathy towards your youngest children who tremble in fear when in your presence. Apparently in the court documents obtained by Page 6, and this was back in 2022, Angelina claimed that her ex-husband
poked one of the children and struck another in the face and then grabbed her head and shook her. Brad has maintained his innocence on that and said that none of that is true. I think it's insane that it hasn't got more coverage.
Yet Brad Pitt continues to act in major roles in Hollywood. He even compares Sydney Sweeney to someone like YouTuber Ethan Klein, who's said a lot of very controversial things recently, as well as over the many years that he's been a content creator, and who we may cover in the upcoming month. Ethan Klein is also still out there making content all the time. So is the standards for what is cancelable when it comes to women just wildly different? But to Sydney Sweeney's audience themselves, it seems like they're growing tired of the constant ad campaigns. But to be essentially spamming these campaigns in a rage bait style way just becomes exhausting. But when examining these campaign releases in conjunction with Sydney's acting project releases, it becomes clear that she was doing these campaigns almost as an additional way to promote her upcoming projects, or possibly to cover them up, and the fact that many of these projects bombed. The Baskin-Robbins campaign aired on June 26. Echo Valley had a limited theatrical release in the US and Canada weeks earlier. The American Eagle campaign followed on July 23rd. The neo-Western crime thriller Americana opened in theaters on August 15th. Eden had a US theatrical release on August 22nd, and on September 5th, Christie premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. But all of Sydney's recent projects have been bombing in a big way, which could have major impacts on her career and what future projects she's able to book. Usually, when working on projects, you have a feeling whether or not it's going to be a success. Her and her team may have known that she was about to release a bunch of projects that were going to fail, that could potentially tank her career, and to try and distract from that, got involved with a bunch of campaigns that would drum up controversy. Though I don't know if anyone, let alone Sydney Sweeney and her team, has that much foresight. Echo Valley received a 52% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Americana received a 63% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It was also considered a major box office bombing. Sydney Sweeney movie bombs. Once again, it's clear that right-wing gooners don't actually care about Sydney Sweeney. This isn't just a regular flop either. The movie is bombing hard.
At the end of the day, American audiences are making it clear, however, culture may shift and controversies may trend, but one thing is certain. We are not going to reward imagery or messaging that echoes the darkest parts of who we are.
Lionsgate just released Americana, a new Sydney Sweeney starring comedy crime movie in about 1,000 screens with absolutely no marketing. And shocker, it flopped. Coming from 1,100 screens, Americana is estimated to pull in under $1 million over the weekend. Americana really should have easily cracked $1 million, especially with Sydney Sweeney, right? And this has attracted a lot of negative headlines for her.
Eden received a 58% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Christie, which was Sydney Sweeney's most anticipated film of the year for a potentially Oscar-winning performance with an incredible transformation, hasn't officially come out yet, but at the time of recording this, its Rotten Tomatoes score is pretty low after debuting at a film festival, and critics are giving it mixed reviews. The last film of the year that Sydney Sweeney is participating in is The Housemaid, which is set for theatrical release on December 25th. That being said, all the backlash, especially due to the American Eagle campaign, Sydney Sweeney has refused to publicly speak on.
A lot of Oscar buzz coming up, a lot of films coming out. How does it feel, though, that it's an advertisement that gets the most attention these days?
I'm so excited for everybody to see Christy Martin.
There's a lot of Oscar buzz. Are you excited about everyone seeing this?
I'm just excited for Christy.
Ahead of her appearance at the Toronto International Film Festival, Sydney Sweeney shut down any questions about the campaign. Sydney Sweeney attended for her film Christy, yet the controversy surrounding the campaign was still gaining traction and noise. I am there to support my movie and the people involved in making it, and I'm not there to talk about jeans, Sweeney told Vanity Fair.
I forgot the question, but playing Christy, you are absolutely incredible, and I'm so honored. I'm gonna cry. Oh my god. You're so inspirational, and so being able to have her by my side during this process was a dream, but then also just scary too, because you're like, oh my gosh, like we're doing this in front of her, and I wasn't quite sure. I mean, she's the greatest boxer in the entire world, and I'm having to do hooks and hits, and I'm like, I hope I'm doing this right.
Nothing to clear up. She is MAGA. She's registered Republican. I would love if someone had the guts to ask about her using a queer woman's story to get awards, recognition, while actively voting against queer people in real life. I know it's not going to happen, but I can dream, lol. When asked about the ad in a Wall Street Journal interview, Sydney refused to talk about it as well. now. I think largely Sydney's refusing to talk about it because if she confirms those beliefs, there's no longer any plausible deniability. But if she says she disagrees with the ad, not only will it reflect badly on the brand she worked with, but the Republican Party that was supporting her will no longer support her. So for publicity reasons, she stays silent, having people support her in reaction to her being canceled, which is what's been happening. Sydney Sweeney came out with another campaign following the American Eagle campaign. This one was with Jimmy Choo. And though Sydney Sweeney was selling shoes, she was dressed in a leotard and stretching in one of the scenes. This ad was relatively normal for a shoe campaign ad though, but there was still some backlash due to the American Eagle controversies sort of trickling over, with people defending Sydney Sweeney in interesting ways. Suddenly, Sydney Sweeney is being attacked by angry, jealous, and bitter women because she's just so beautiful. Joshua Tyler wrote for Why Entertainment, "The opposition to this is becoming increasingly silly, which means it's probably about to go away, and will soon return to the days of babes selling beer and bikinis. I don't know if that was a better world, but the streets were cleaner back then, and the billboards were nicer too." The comments under this article read, "This is a woman using her years of peak physical beauty to earn a living. What is wrong with an empowered woman taking care of herself? She's laughing all the way to the bank." Jealousy is a very dark emotion. It only enhances the failure of the person who's filled with jealousy, just a downward spiral of negative emotions. It seems like Jimmy Choo unlocked a new demographic of buyers who now feel even more strongly emboldened to support Sydney Sweeney. Whether it's because of her political beliefs or this idea that they need to defend her from a mob of haters, who knows. One fan wrote, "Buying my wife a pair of these shoes and a handbag. Done. Gotta support them and give my wife a little extra this Christmas. Good on ya, Jimmy Choo." Sydney Sweeney also made headlines when she attended Jeff Bezos' wedding. After attending Jeff Bezos' wedding, there were headlines that he was helping fund her career and PR, though this was allegedly through blind item reports, which I personally don't think are very credible, at least not for sourcing. I just wanted to make note of this here.
What is going on with Sydney Sweeney and Jeff Bezos? He is allegedly financing her entire career and pushing PR dollars out to help her reputation. And on July 16th, the illiterate actress and the wealthy bookseller had a one-on-one dinner.
There are also a lot of headlines stating that Jeff Bezos himself helped fund and launch Sydney Sweeney's upcoming lingerie brand. The facts of this story was that Sydney Sweeney is launching a lingerie company, and she did get investors for this company. Because of this, she probably needed to prove in some ways that she was able to sell. I'm wondering if this was also a reason behind these ad campaigns as well. That being said, the headlines that directly claim that Jeff Bezos himself is investing in the lingerie company might be somewhat over-sensationalized, as it was a fund that Jeff Bezos invested in that invested in Sydney Sweeney's company. Since Jeff Bezos has so much money and has probably invested in numerous funds, he probably didn't even know he was a partial investor in Sydney Sweeney's company. That is, until all of these headlines came out, because oftentimes when you invest into a fund, you don't have control over where that fund invests or sends that money out to, essentially.
Jeff Bezos has nothing to do with the investment in Sydney Sweeney's potential lingerie company. Hi, I'm Beggs. I'm super sick right now, but I went to Stanford Business School. I got my undergrad at Cornell. I worked in finance for 4 years. I still kind of do. My goal is to make you smarter. A lot of these headlines have been insinuating that Jeff Bezos invited Sydney Sweeney to his wedding because he's investing in her lingerie company. And while technically that might be true, I don't think Jeff Bezos even knows that he's invested yet. That's because the investment is rumored to be made by a fund called Co2. Jeff Bezos invested in the fund Co2. Co2 is a huge fund. You might know them for their investments in BeReal, Discord, DoorDash, Instacart, you guys get it. So when Co2 makes an investment in Sydney Sweeney, does Jeff Bezos even know that that investment is happening? No. When a high net worth individual invests in any fund, not just private equity, they are an LP, and the people who work at that fund, whether it's private equity, venture, hedge fund, you name it, they are a GP. Jeff Bezos as an LP gives capital to the fund, has limited liability in that there's limited upside for him, but he has a passive role. He is not involved in daily decision making.
Yet TikTok's headlines and news outlets continue to spread this narrative, making it seem like Jeff Bezos himself is the one that invested into Sydney Sweeney and that Sydney cozied up to him so that he would do so.
Maybe that's what that lingerie party at the wedding was all about. Maybe they were just soft launching her new lingerie brand. Her cute little lingerie brand. that Jeff Bezos just so happens to be donating $1 billion to after a foam party and a lingerie sleepover at his wedding. She could be doing Cars. She could be doing better films, but no.
As far as Sydney Sweeney's lingerie line, apart from the investor headlines, not much else has been reported. Sydney starting a company like this is a far cry from the acting dreams that she claimed to have wanted for herself in the past, essentially leaning fully into capitalizing off of her looks. But at the same time, if others were constantly going to have Sydney wear lingerie in their movies, for their companies, their advertisements, just like starting her own production company, I could see why she might want to take control of the narrative. The biggest question in all of this is, will Sydney ever really have control? Or does her constant desire for control and for money actually cause her to let others have the power in the end? Because having investors involved in her lingerie company has already caused Sydney Sweeney to give up a good amount of control. There are also headlines that claimed that Sydney Sweeney has been rumored to be casually dating Scooter Braun, and they were spotted traveling together, reportedly met after both attending the wedding of Jeff Bezos.
Who in Sydney Sweeney's life hates her so bad that they are encouraging her to do things that will torpedo her career and any public goodwill that she has left towards her? Not only are we trying to recover from a Eugenics scandal, we are now dating internet's most hated man and one of the most repulsive men to ever walk the face of the earth, Scooter Braun. What are you getting from that? Being an actor costs a lot of money. I have to pay my lawyer and my agent and my publicist. You're going to be paying them a lot more money when you have to fire your public relations team and hire a crisis PR firm to get you out of this mess.
Most people, especially in the entertainment industry, are aware of Scooter Braun's controversy and past history, especially in regards to Taylor Swift and essentially being a bully towards her. One of the catalysts behind her re-releasing her work or buying back her masters. I'm explaining everything very simplistically. Funny enough, Scooter Braun's comes up in a lot of the videos I've covered on music artists if you want to know more about him.
It's not just that Sydney Sweeney and Scooter Braun are dating. It's also the fact that the way the two of them met was by both of them attending the wedding of Jeff Bezos. There's something that like deeply, it just feels like kind of greasy and slimy. Something in my ancient mammalian brain really like looks at the photos of them next to each other in the magazine articles and is like, it like rejects it. It's like, no, this isn't right.
Because Scooter Braun has been reported to be an incredibly exploitative figure in the music industry, it's led people to believe that Sydney dating Scooter is her doing so for media attention, essentially doing a stunt, wanting more rage baiting and more controversy.